Welcome. I am your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on social media at MMALOTN, joined by my guy, as always, Cody Saftic. You guys can follow him at CJ Saftic on Twitter. And we are here propping you up for UFC Vegas 57, headlined by two budding prospects, at least in the UFC standards. We got Arman Tsarukyan taking on Polish startup Mateusz Gamrot. Very interesting main event here, Cody. Before we get into that, though, how are you doing, my friend? We're talking about the show that you got coming up this weekend. Shows the trials and tribulations of the behind the scenes of regional MMA. Share it with the people. I'm sure they would love to hear about your experience.
Yeah, I briefly touched on it yesterday on the Dogger Paz podcast, but it's just like one thing after the next, right? I mean, they always say if you want 10 fights on your card, plan for 20. In this case, we planned for 20, and we are currently left with like 4. Trying to save another 5, but dude, it's honestly everything. Like this morning, it's like, oh, Scott Lamont failed his stress test. He got on a treadmill and he ran. It's like you have to run 10 minutes on an incline. They say he's got high blood pressure. So immediately they red flag him. They're like, you're done. We got another guy's coming from the States, coming from Florida, right? Test positive for COVID at the airport, wasn't allowed to fly in. Like, it's just one thing after the next. Got this guy, Patrick Connors, right? This guy's a gangster. He fought in Quebec in May, right? Chokes the guy out, first round rear naked choke. Flies out 3 weeks later down to Nova Scotia, knocked out a guy in 90 seconds, and he lives like, I don't know, 2-3 hours from the venue. I contacted him this morning. I'm like, dude, do you want to fight Saturday? You'd have to drop everything you're doing, drive to Niagara Falls, stay at the hotel tonight, weigh in tomorrow morning, fight up a weight class, fight some guy that there's no readily footage available on him, and he's a killer. Would you drop everything you're doing and take this fight on literally less than 2 days' notice? He's like, 100%. I'm like, oh my God, there's a savior to the world. There is fighters out there. Some people are actually about that life. Contact the commission. They're like, nah, I see he fought 14 days ago, and you automatically get a 14-day suspension, right? So it's like, well, he knocked out the guy in 90 seconds. He took no damage. Automatic 14-day suspension. The commission that sanctioned his last fight gave him a 7-day suspension. They signed off on it. Patrick Connors signed off on it. Ontario Commission? Oh, no. That's a New Brunswick rule. That's a maritime rule. In Ontario, 14 days. It's on the 14th fucking day. Won't do it. Try to get him cleared by a neurologist. Won't do it. Tried to get the New Brunswick Commission to contact Ontario. Wow. Wouldn't do it. Tried everything. Wouldn't do it. Asked them if we could push the event back. Started at 10. Move this to the last fight. It happens at midnight. Passed it. No, that's too cheeky for them because it started on this day. Impossible, dude. Whatever could be done, try to get done. I had strep throat yesterday. It was way worse. Like, terrible couple days. Today I feel a little bit better, so like I won't waste too much time. We'll get through the show. It is what it is, but like this is like the most stressful week of all time. Anyways, luckily for me, I'm not an investor in the promotion. I'm just an matchmaker. So like I feel shitty about it, but at the end of the day, life does go on. But I feel for them, right? Because they've done everything to try to accommodate guys, give them good deals, accommodations, like everything, right? They pay well. They're super courteous. And just, I mean, if you're not the UFC or Bellator, people just don't care about pulling out on fight week.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate. It seems like the commission really hasn't changed much from when we were planning fights almost 10 years ago for substance cage combat. So I feel for you there. But if anybody is in or near the Niagara Falls area, make sure you guys go check out the show. However many fights Cody manages to string together, make sure you guys go check it out, support your boy. And you might even see him cage side as well. You might even be able to say what up to him too. So I'm sure that would add a benefit to going out there and paying the price of admission for that. All right, let's get to the UFC fights here, Cody. And I kicked it off by talking about budding prospects in the main event, right? We as hardcores know who these guys are. But the casual viewer really doesn't, they probably never heard of these guys, right? When you have a guy with the nickname or the last name Tsarukyan, they probably don't even know how to pronounce it to begin with. Gamrot, we know he was a superstar over there in Poland with the KSW promotion before coming to the UFC, but the casual viewing fan just doesn't know that. So I feel like this is a a, that it's a great main event for a diehard fan, right? But from a promotional perspective, this seems to be something new that they're doing, right? This is like the first time I can remember where guys from a diehard's perspective, these guys deserve to be in the main event, but they don't really have much star power, much value behind them. It's not like they're coming off crazy highlight reel finishes. Yeah, they do have finishes, but it's nothing like a spinning back kick or a flying knee or anything like that you can play on repeat over and over again. Heck, if I'm not mistaken, the last win for Tsarukyan was Joel Alvarez, where he cut him up, and I believe it was stopped due to cuts and obviously an absolute beatdown as well in that fight. But it's nothing highlight reel-esque that you can pull out. What do you make of this main event from a fan's perspective, a casual fan's perspective?
Yeah, I've actually heard that argument a little bit. People were saying this card was a little bit weak and an odd headliner, and I completely disagree. First of all, when you're talking about drawing power, I mean, the KSW drawing power is definitely there with Mateusz Gamrot. This guy used to sell out full arenas over in Poland. He's a giant star in Eastern Europe, and I mean, certainly he comes in here with a 20-1 record, a two-division world champion over in Europe, and his only loss is a debatable split decision in a 3-round fight. Yeah, I think he's the man. Then also you look at the work that he's done in the UFC since then. I mean, he finished Jeremy Stephens in 1 minute with a Kimura, like nasty, man. He goes out there and he puts an absolute beating on Carlos Diego Ferreira, breaks a rib. You know what? That's a weird fight. It's a triple stoppage. The doctor stops it on an injury, right? The doctor also stops it on like a TKO due to punches. And they also stop it because he taps due to a naked choke. Like he broke his rib, got punched a bunch, and then as they were stopping it, he got caught with the choke. But it was a mauling, dude. Gamrot was all over him, right? So I think he's exciting. You look at Tsarukyan, and he's finished his last two opponents, both nice victories, knocks out Christos Giagos in 1 round. Impressive, difficult to do, and then goes out there and puts an absolute mauling on Joel Alvarez, who people were high up on. So you got a guy that's 16-2, 18-2. My eyes are fucking crapping out on me, I guess. 18-2 versus a guy that's 20-1, right? Both guys are viable for a title shot within the next fight or two. They're at the top of the game. One guy's 25 years old, one guy's 31. Like, perfect. 5-round fight, actually. Who does it favor? You got one guy, Mateusz Gamrot, who's fought 5 rounds a bunch of times. And like a steam engine, he only keeps getting better and better. And then Tsarukyan has only fought in 3-rounders, but he just looks so goddamn good. Cardio looks so good. It's intriguing. It's badass. I don't know why anybody would complain about this. Oh, casual fans don't know them. Why? Because they're foreigners? Because they have different last names? Is that why casual fans don't know them? They're top-ranked guys in the division. They're exciting prospects. Then you look at the rest of this card. Neil Magny, perennial fringe contender for 10 years versus Shavkat Rakhmonov, another guy that's probably going to fight for a world title, right? Facts. Guy's 16-0 with 16 finishes. He's a beast. Right? You got Thiago Moises Giagos, fun fight. Umar Nurmagomedov, super stud, versus Nate Maness, 3-0, the comeback kid. My boy Chris Curtis versus the BJJ world champion Rodolfo Vieira. This is dope. You got Carlos Ulberg, Nchukwi. Could be cool. Yeah. Morozov versus Paiva, violence. Mario Bautista versus Brian Kelleher is the second fight on the fucking card. This is a good card, man. So I don't really understand the complaining on like a I'm a matchmaker. I would take any fight on this card, but I'm taking any fight on this card.
Just give me one. Give me one.
Give me Vanessa Demoupolous, new Frey, my headliner. No. So, yeah, I appreciate the efforts that they have here. I think it's a good, solid effort, good, solid outing. And to be honest, I like some of the lines. I will admit, by the time you and I do the show on Thursday, a lot of these lines have been hit in the right direction. Yeah. And I feel like some of them have been steamed to a point where you still like it because you think it's going to hit, but you also don't like it as much because you're a little bit weary about, do I want to put a significant investment on it, right? I will admit that. But for the rest of it, it's going to be entertaining. It's going to be action-packed, and I am looking forward.
Yeah, I'm not complaining whatsoever. I just found that narrative to be hammered over Twitter over the last week or two once they are actually announced the bout order and all that stuff. But I'm loving it, man. Every single fight that you talked about and more. There's so much to look forward to in terms of entertainment value and also like the repercussions of each fight from a rankings perspective, right? I'm very much looking forward to seeing how these guys get matched up after this, specifically the main event. All right, before we get into the card here, let's just give a quick couple shout outs here. Obviously, first and foremost to the All-Star for giving us the platform as always to drop this prop and UP show for you guys on a weekly basis. And shout out to obviously all of you guys supporting us, watching this show on a weekly basis. The least we ask from you guys is make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe below to show the All-Star that we are definitely worth keeping around. they're not talking about getting rid of us anytime soon, but the more that you guys stay consistent with it, the more that they see that our show is definitely one of the best that are out there. Secondly, shout out to betonline.ag. If you guys are looking for another bookie to get up and saddle up with, BetOnline is probably the one that you're looking for, because they are usually the first people to drop props and odds on most MMA fights, and not just the UFC. We're talking about PFL, Bellator, KSW, even some Canadian promotions as well. I was unfortunately not able to get anything going for Cody's show there, but I know he has another show coming up eventually, and we'll try to lock it up for that. But BetOnline is definitely your go-to spot for MMA, especially if you're a diehard MMA fan. You can bet on almost anything there. And secondly, shout out to Cloudbet, which I'm actually going to pull up right here as well to quickly go over the special props that we had for last week's card, the Calvin Kattar card, and what ended up hitting there. So first and foremost, I'm going to skip over the over under 1.5, because that's not over under 4.5 for the Kattar and Emmett fight, since that's not really a special prop per se that they dropped for us. The first one was Calvin Kattar's significant strikes over under 122.5. He hits it by 7.5. That's an over there, so you can cash that at -109. Fight of the night ended up going to the main event as well at +900. Josh Emmett and Calvin Kattar walk away with that those honors. And then total finishes on the card. Good Lord, that card was a banger. Almost every single fight, even if it went to a decision, was an absolute banger there. The over 7.5 finishes hits on that. We end up with a total of 9 that night. I believe you could even cash that prop even before like the fourth last fight of the night. So finishes were coming fast and furious that weekend. And then lastly, total takedowns. 33.5 was very, very generous, considering we only ended up with 12 that night. So under 33.5 hits at -118. Shout out to anybody that was able to take advantage of those props. Like I said, you can get those props at Cloudbet. Link is in the description below. We got plenty more props for you guys this week that we'll talk about as we go through this card. I came up with some pretty cool ones, which I'm very much looking forward to hearing. One, Cody's thoughts on, and two, what other people are thinking about.
Did those cloud bets from last week get voided because of the Lozon Cerrone cancellation?
It depends on let's see.
Because they usually got it listed for like 14 bouts. So if there's a certain amount of takedowns and stuff like that.
You're right. No, you're right. So the last two actually did end up getting voided there because it wasn't 14 bouts. It was only 13. The fight of the night would still have paid out.
And I was my personal angle. I was trying to get all up on that under 33.5 in the takedowns, and it was voided. So I was like, son of a bitch. As soon as Wynn shot the first one and got nowhere with it, I was like, okay, we're good here. Every other fight was about a minute long. Who was getting taken down? Who's getting taken down? Unless the body hitting the canvas counted as a takedown, they weren't going to get it. But Cerrone lows on day of. So even the UFC deals with it. Unfortunately, they've got 13 other fights to fall back on.
Exactly. All right, let's not waste too much more time. Let's get right into the card, starting off with the first fight of the night. It is a strawweight bout between Jinh Frey and Vanessa Demoupolous. In terms of odds, you got chalk on the Jinh Frey side at -225, +190 the return on Vanessa Demoupolous. Now, I believe this is so 2 fights before this, there was a 2-fight winning streak that Jinh Frey was on. She was the underdog in both of those fights. She comes and wins both of those fights. Now she's coming in as a chalk against none other than Vanessa Demoupolous, who seems to have a very one-sided game, right? She doesn't usually win decisions. Her last 3 wins are all via finish, some of them even in comeback fashion. Remember the Silvana Juarez-Gomez fight where she gets knocked down. She pulls off the armbar victory there. The Sam Hughes inverted triangle choke, she was pretty much getting pummeled on for about 3.5 rounds before she eventually found that inverted choke. And then there was one more sprinkled in there against a complete nobody. But she has also lost 3 fights in that stretch as well, all via decision, and that just goes to show that she's not really a decision type fighter, right? Like, she doesn't do much in terms of her striking. She lacks a lot in that, in my opinion. A lot of it, a lot of her success has to do with her BJJ, but she doesn't even really have the greatest wrestling game to try to implement it either. So the majority of her her jiu-jitsu success comes off of her back. She's very active in terms of throwing up submissions, throwing up arm bars, even going for inverted triangle chokes. Like we said, she got over Sam Hughes. That's where the majority of her success comes from. Whereas on the Jinh Frey side, I think she's the better striker. I think she's the better overall grappler, maybe not jiu-jitsu player per se, but I think she's the better wrestler, and she should do a good enough job in terms of staying out of any submission attempts that Vanessa tries to throw up to her. And when you have a minus 225 line on a girl like Jinyu Frey, or I should say woman, I apologize, a woman like Jinyu Frey, you start to question it a little bit. But then you look at the Vanessa Demoupolous tape and you completely understand why the line is where it's at. So I do lean on the Frey side here. I do think she'll mix up her striking with some of her takedowns. And as long as she stays safe enough from on top, she should be able to grind this fight out over 15 minutes and win this fight via decision. That's pretty much the way that I'm looking to tackle it here. Frey by decision, currently sitting around minus 120. Do I have the balls to, or the heart, I should say, to sweat out 15 minutes of her trying not to get armbarred from bottom by Vanessa Demoupolous? Probably not, but I would rather pay minus 125 believing that she's not going to get the finish either here, right? Like Vanessa Demoupolous is very difficult to put away, very squirmy as well, which makes it very difficult for opponents to posture up and rain down shots from on top. And in terms of pure jiu-jitsu, again, I'd be surprised if Jinyu Frey actually manages to get an armbar or a rear naked choke of any sort in this spot. So give me Jin by decision, minus 120. What are you thinking, Cody?
Yeah, same page with Vanessa Demoupolous. Obviously, she's very crafty. It's called stripper guard. I'm not saying that in disrespectful fashion. I think she calls it stripper guard as well, where she's super flexible and she's very, very strong. And if you end up in her guard, she'll throw up triangles, she'll throw up arm bars. You mentioned that Sam Hughes fight in LFA where she hits her with an inverted triangle choke in the 4th round. So she's dangerous all the way through. She has pretty good cardio. She does have a good chin. You did see her get rocked pretty bad by Silva Juarez Gomez, but of course she, guts her wits about her back right away. It snatches up the armbar. So we know that she's very dangerous in that realm. The problem is that I'm a big Vanessa Demoupolous fan. She doesn't have the striking to outstrike somebody for 15 minutes, and she doesn't have the wrestling to implement this world-class BJJ. Like, no doubt about it, her ground game is very refined and very good for the division, but she just struggles to get the fights to the ground. That fight with Sam Hughes, for the record, if it was only a 3-round fight, she got boxed up. She got straight up boxed up. That's fair. Sam Hughes is decent enough. All of her losses, it was the same thing. Lupita Godinez, she couldn't take her down initially. She had to wait till Lupita tired out down the stretch, but not a very great performance. Fight with JJ Aldrich, boxed up. Sprawl and brawl, keep it standing, box her up. And then, of course, you've seen that in that last fight with Silva Gomez Juarez, which it's much as the same. So officially, if you go by fight metric, they've only got listed her Contender Series fight with Corey McKenna, in which she lands 0 takedowns. Her fight with JJ Aldrich, which she scored 0 takedowns. And the fight with Gomez Juarez, she got knocked down, and that's how the fight hit the ground. But effectively, you've not seen her go out there and use wrestling in any one spot. Now, you could theorize. I love theorizing. Well, maybe she's working on her wrestling. Yeah, could be. But with who? Well, I'll tell you who. Mackenzie Dern. So wrestling probably not going to be where it needs to be. That being said, if you look at Jinyu Frey shows 90% takedown defense in the UFC. Did get taken down twice by Kay Hansen in her debut. Since then, quite good. I mean, I think that's an aspect of her game that she's also been working on. 37 years old, but it doesn't seem like she's slowing down. Always comes in great shape. And more impressively, her fighter last time out with Ashley Yoder. Ashley Yoder's kind of big, brooding, and got some decent enough wrestling. And she stuffed all 8 of the takedown attempts to keep the fight standing. When the fight does stay standing, she'll just feed a steady diet of straight left hands down the pipe. She keeps everything sharp. She keeps everything linear. Vanessa Demoupolous is a very hittable target. She just got to minor P's and Q's, touch her at range, move out of the way, keep the fight standing. If she can do that for 2 to 3 rounds, she wins. She wins a decision. Minus 120, all good. Only thing not good is this money line is way off. This is women's MMA, dog. Women's MMA, dog. And one of them is really good on the ground, right? If the fight hits the ground at any one point, she can swing it in her favor. Look at last week's show, okay? You got Jasmine Jasudavicius as a minus 240 favorite and got wrecked 30-26, okay? You got Gloria De Paula, probably should have won the fight, but who cares? She's a minus 260 favorite in a close fight and loses a decision. So this is much of the same. I like Jinyu Frey, but am I that confident that this is not going to be a greasy, close fight? No. Am I not that confident that it's just going to hit the ground at some point and Vanessa Demoupolous locks something up? No. It's in the apex, small cage. Who's to say Vanessa couldn't trip her up to the ground somehow? But logic would say Jinyu Frey probably stuffs the takedowns and outstrikes her. So that's the angle that I'm working. That's the angle I'm going to go with, but I really do not agree with this money line.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can kind of agree with that, especially with the skill set that Frey brings to the table. But it's Vanessa Demoupolous at the end of the day, and I feel like I'm on pretty good talking terms with Santiago DeFranco, who is one of our main coaches there, and he knows like there are certain parts of her game that are lacking, and they're doing the best in terms of just wrapping it up with the bow and trying to put together a solid package. So for the fights this weekend, especially against a tested veteran like Jin Yu Frey. They know they have a test ahead of them there.
I'd say pull guard, man. Honestly, like, it sounds stupid. Nobody wants to do it in MMA, but one, this is women's MMA, so pulling guard, not a bad idea. Arm bars from guard happen all the time. And also, just, you're not winning the fight standing, so just get it to the ground by any means necessary. And for the record, Kay Hansen locked up. It was like a half flying arm bar. You know what I mean? Grab a hold of her, whip her to the ground. Like, that's what you have to do. And you know what? Similar to how I made mention of Mackenzie Dern, right? You watch Mackenzie Dern's last fight against Tisha Torres. Unbelievable. She kind of pulled guard, but like, it was like a standing guard pull. You remember that? She grabs a Kimura from a standing position, jumps on it, drags the fight to the ground, and then it's where she wants it to be. That would be the way to win this fight. And again, making it greasy would be the way to win it. But at 115 pounds, WMMA, oh, I've seen it all, man. And this kind of shit happens all the time. So buyer beware.
Exactly. Great way to put it out there, Cody. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We're looking at a men's bantamweight scrap between Mario Bautista and Brian Kelleher. We got -170 right now on Bautista and +145 on Kelleher. Now, I got to admit, I never really was that big on Brian Kelleher in the past. I usually thought like he was a fringe top 30 guy, maybe even top 40, but he's really grinding himself down to getting to an efficient gatekeeper role for that top 20 range there. With, you know, we know what he's mainly known for, right? Big power in his hands. He has that nasty guillotine as well if he's able to get his arm around your neck. But one thing that he's implemented over his last 2 wins, obviously last time around he fell short against Nurmagomedov. Can't really blame him for that one. But the two prior fights to that, he beat Domingo Pilarte, and he had that other win. Let me just quickly pull it up. I'm blanking right now off the top of my head. Kevin Kroom, up a weight class against a much bigger opponent, manages to muster up 9 takedowns over those 2 fights and almost 19 minutes of control time as well over those 2 fights. So we see him kind of developing his game to, play it safer if he needs to. It's very difficult to always find the chin of your opponent, and finally, realizing that you need to evolve your game to stay in the UFC and to have that longevity is a very smart move by him. And I'm starting to respect him more and more for it. Now he's fighting a guy in Mario Bautista who I kind of put in the Jonathan Martinez realm, right? Like, they're both great strikers and they do their best work when they're able to put their combinations together and their kicks together. But there's always that one worry that they're going to get clipped and hurt and rocked and dropped or something like that. We obviously saw it happen with Jonathan Martinez and Davey Grant. We saw it happen with Mario Bautista when he fought Trevin Jones a couple fights ago. But obviously since then, he's been able to bounce back with that Jay Perron win, which is a great win for him. I still have that little bit of reservation, though. I do actually end up siding with the underdog here in Brian Kelleher because I do think he has a little bit more tools to get it done. And what I mean by that is he has the power to staple his pressure per se, and then he also has the wrestling here if he needs it to try to drag Bautista to the ground and grind him out in that fashion as well. Like, I'm fully expecting Bautista to get the better of him in terms of the output numbers and the striking and the volume. But I do think that Kelleher's ability to mix it up completely, and we've seen him do it against much bigger guys. Like, Kevin Kroom was a big guy compared to Brian Kelleher that night, and he still managed to drag that fight to the ground and grind it out. Now, I don't expect him to accrue 13 minutes of control time like he did that night against Kevin Kroom, but I do expect him to mix it up well enough and land big enough shots that the judges will likely see it in his favor as well. So initially, I was leaning on the Mario Bautista side, but once I started running the tape, I do think that Bautista leaves some openings in terms of getting hit with that big power hook by Brian Kelleher, or I should say overhand. But that could also allow him to close the distance to start to drag fights to the ground and then start getting some work done there as well. I'm seeing, a decision from the Brian Kelleher side. That's kind of what I'm leaning on. And that number is currently sitting at plus 400. But there's always that chance that he lands that boom bomb and he catches that plus 600 via KO ticket as well. I'm going to lean Kelleher via decision as probably one of my favorite bets. Let's see what the over is looking like here too, because I think if Bautista gets it done, he'll likely get it done via decision as well. Fight goes to decision, even money, -110, over 2.5, -135. I don't mind those lines either, but I'm going to lean more so on the Brian Kelleher side here. Either he grinds this out or he finds that bomb. I'm leaning with the former though, with the decision at plus 400. What about yourself?
Yeah, man, not a bad play. Not a bad play at all. I'm definitely concerned about Kelleher landing the big overhand right. He hasn't shown a whole lot of knockouts in the UFC. I think he only has 2 of them, but all the same, dude, the way he whips that and the knockout wins that he does have, namely the Hunter Azer one, he's got power, no doubt about that. And of course, you brought up the guillotine choke, one of his favorite weapons, something he can go to. My boy Mario Bautista tends to make mistakes. He tends to leave his head up open a little too much. He tends to admire his work a little too much. And as a result, he is prone to getting caught. If he does get caught from Kelleher, he's going to be in a world of shit for sure. But I can't take Brian Kelleher. Something about him. I'm off the train. I like Boom as a personality. He's a good guy. At 36 years old, I'm thinking he's starting to lose a little bit of that razzmatazz that made him special to begin with. But his last 6 fights since the Hunter Azer contest, not all that good. Namely, he has to have the wrestling advantage. He needs to be able to take you down. He doesn't want to stand with these guys anymore. When he fought Cody Stamen, no wrestling advantage there. As a result, forced to stand with him, and you see him just get battered from the outside. 89-57. No strikes landed. Okay, doesn't throw in combinations. Waits on his punches. Can't get the fight to the ground. Against Ricky Simone. Well, you're not going to take Ricky Simone down, right? So as a result, he's getting out-wrestled. He's getting outstruck. Flat performance. Domingo Pilarte, Kevin Croom, very interesting. Neither guy can stuff a takedown, right? And neither guy really has much of a game off his back. So Kelleher fights an excellent game plan, taking down Pilarte 3 times and holding him down. Doesn't pass his guard, doesn't try to submit him, doesn't do any real ground and pound. He just takes him down and holds him down. And he does the same thing against Kevin Croom, but not exciting and not convincing. Keep in mind, he got outstruck by Kevin Croom 60-38, even though he had the 6 takedowns. He got outstruck in the first 2 rounds. I think it was a combined margin of 55-25. He looked like shit, but he was able to take him down. Well, big fucking deal. Eventually, you're not going to get the takedown. You can't just sit on a guy. They're not even really rewarding stalling anymore, and that's what he did against both those guys. And then against Umar, well, he just got absolutely killed because Umar's a supreme talent. When I think about Mario Bautista, 27 years old, out of the MMA lab, he is improving. He's made some mistakes here and there. His takedown defense could use some work. But one thing you do see in the Jay Perrin fight is that whenever he did get taken down, he got up right away. Cardio looked good. Footwork looked good. Speed looked good. At range, he's got better striking technique. I think he's going to chew up Kelleher from the outside. He's just got to avoid getting hit with that bomb. And if he does get taken down, don't get complacent. Don't sit on your back. Butt scoot, get to the cage, get back up ASAP. If he's able to do that, he's just going to simply outwork him. And work is the name of the game. That's what they're scoring, especially in a small little apex. They're not going to care about one guy's holding the other guy up against the cage, completing a takedown. They're going to look for actual shot impact. And what I'm seeing out of Kelleher is his numbers are low, man. Of course, he landed 1 against Umar because he got taken right down, but 38 against Croom, 15 minutes. He landed 38 strikes. Low. Domingo Pilarte, he landed 28 strikes in 15 minutes. Dude, that is low. Ricky Simone, 19. Effectively, he's landed less than 40 significant strikes in each of his last 5 fights. Yeah, like, it's low, man. His career high is 57. Well, you gotta have to go all the way back to the Henan Barao fight. Okay, so my bad. In the last 5 years, his highest output landing in a fight was 57. You had better hope he gets these takedowns, and you had better hope he gets lots of them. Because if Batista's working his way back up, I think he's going to punish him from range. And for that reason, I got Bautista. Also agree it goes to decision. You're thinking Kelleher by decision. I'm going to go Bautista by decision. But last but not least, I have been burned by my boy Mario Bautista in the past. His 2 fights ago against Trevin Jones, he looked awesome in the first round. Fluid, clean, precise. Second round, bomb. Caught with the counter, shot up the middle. I believe it was maybe a lead uppercut. Catches him, drops him over. I could see Brian Kelleher catching him something and making it tough, but I'm just hoping that Bautista minds his P's and Q's, stays out of range, and just outworks him.
I will say this about Brian. A lot of the matchups that he's had over the last couple fights are grappling-based fighters, right? The Ricky Simone fight, not really being able to get too much offense off there due to the threat of the takedown. Not to mention, getting controlled for 8 minutes in that fight, getting taken down 6 of 9 times. The Domingo Pilarte one is very interesting, right? He wins that fight. 3-round decision, has 13 minutes of control time that night, lands 28 significant strikes, like you said, but lands a total of 236 strikes that night. All pitter patter, just shots from the top, trying to stay active enough. Like, I get where you're coming from in terms of significant strike numbers, but I think here against Bautista, we might be able to see a little bit more, but I do think that Bautista will definitely outstrike him. It's about the full package that Kelleher should be able to put together here. Hopefully he can get the takedowns. Hopefully he can get some pitter patter from on top to stay active, that the referee doesn't stand them up. But there's a reason he is the underdog. I completely agree that he should be the underdog, but I do think that this fight will play closer to a 50-50 fight than whatever this is, 65 35 fight for Mr. Mario Bautista. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We're looking at a men's flyweight fight. We got Cody Durden going up against, keep my wife's name out your mouth, JP Bays. In terms of odds, we're currently looking at minus, actually, you know what? It's pretty much a pick 'em. You see minus 115, minus 110 for both guys on plenty of these websites. Should be a fun grappling fight, right? Like both of these guys very much reliant on the grappling games. I'm still not over the fact that I did not get to cash my Montel Jackson and JP Bays fight does not go to decision. There were so many opportunities that night for Montel Jackson to get the finish. If I'm not mistaken, let me just pull up the number here real quick. In terms of the amount of knockdowns that Montel Jackson was able to get that night, 4 knockdowns, no finish. He got 10 minutes of control time. A lot of that was him following JP Bays to the ground and then, landing some shots from on top, not enough to get the fight stopped. And then JP Bays holds on for dear life. I believe he kept going for a Kimura, either a Kimura sweep or at least just threatening with the Kimura so that Jackson couldn't get any shots from on top. And the referee just let that go on and on and on, which were, there were a lot of moments of stalemating there on the JP Bays side of things, which obviously didn't allow me to cash. That fight doesn't go to decision. But here against Cody Durden, I think we'll see a lot more of a competitive fight. And I actually lean with the JP Bays side here. I do think that he has the chops to go out there and get a finish, whether it's a submission, whether it's a TKO. Durden on paper might be the better wrestler, but I do think that JP Bays will likely be the better the MMA grappler, if you want to call it that. I do think he'll be able to threaten with a lot more submissions. I do think he'll be able to remain way more active in those situations. And I could see him being, a step ahead in most of those grappling situations. The only issue with him, though, is we know his cardio starts to fall off. Usually, over that 1.5 round mark, that's probably where Durden can start to take over if Bays hasn't already gotten a finish. So I do lean on the Bays side here, and I do lean him by finish. Bays inside the distance currently sits at plus 210, but the fight doesn't go to decision. I'm liking minus 110. I'm actually even seeing under 2.5 here on Bet Online at plus 115. I think we're going to see some grappling violence here, Cody. I do think that we're going to see these guys go back and forth, and eventually a submission opportunity or a ground and pound opportunity will open itself up. Most people would say early will likely be Bays, late will likely be Durden. I'm going to go with the former here. I think that Bays gets it done under 1.5 rounds. So, I'll likely sprinkle some of that fight doesn't go to decision, as well as some Bays inside the distance at plus 200. What are you feeling here?
Yeah, I'm feeling this fight don't go the distance first and foremost. Like if Bays does pull it off, I think he's going to tire Durden out and catch him with a choke. And if Durden's able to pull it off, Bays has been dropped 7 times in his last 2 fights, right? So that's very problematic. I just don't think this fight's going to go the distance. And as a result, like minus 115, fight doesn't go the distance. Looks pretty good to me. I agree with pretty much all your points, though, except for you mentioned you thought Cody Durden might have been a better wrestler on paper. Well, what has Cody Durden really ever done to show that he's a good wrestler? I mean, he wrestled in high school. He did not win a state title. I thought he did, but I looked at it this morning, and I think he placed. He advanced to the state final as a senior. There you go. And did not win a state title. Then he gets apparently a wrestling scholarship at West Point, which he turned down. So he never wrestled in college. He attempted to win a state title in high school. That's it. Okay. JP Bays, meanwhile, has won multiple African titles. He competed for South Africa at the Worlds, finishing 12th, and was thinking about going to the Olympics for South Africa. So I get one's American wrestling, which is a lot higher level than South African wrestling. But this other guy competed on a world team against some of the best guys in the world. And Durden would have been a D3 All-American at best, I think. So I think JP Bays has got the wrestling advantage. He's got the scrambles. He's got the grappling. He's got all of that. The one thing is I don't think he can take a punch. But I want to give him a bit of a pass, right? Because when you look at his 2 opponents in the UFC, Bruno Silva is a dog. My God, that's a tough fight. It's a real tough fight. I don't think he fully knew what he was getting himself into. And as a result, he gets dropped 3 times. He showed a little perseverance, but eventually gets stopped. And then he goes through a nasty divorce, which is kind of half made public. And then he takes on Montel Jackson, where he took the fight on short notice. He jumped up a weight class to 135 and took on the biggest dude in the division. Montel Jackson is gigantic. So he hasn't really done himself any favors. He hasn't looked good, but I think that a lot of that is the matchmaking. Now, he got beat up bad against Bruno Silva, and then 6 months later, he's in there up a weight class on short notice against Montel Jackson, and likewise got his ass kicked. But now he's coming off like a 10-month-long layoff. He's only 26 years old. I think that a little refresher would be good for his body, good for his head, shake out the cobwebs, and then just get right back in there. He's full-time out of Las Vegas now. I know he's training at an elite level. He's just got to go out there and perform the way he's able to. The thing with Cody Durden, not that he's untalented, but his wrestling is good enough to skate by against guys that can't wrestle, right? Chris Gutierrez is the world. Like, those guys aren't really known for the wrestling, so he can get by against them. But in all of the fights that he's had, he's flat out gassed out. And when he gasses out, that's when problems definitely occur for him. The Chris Gutierrez fight, he won the first round. Why was it 10-8? I could not explain to you. But the second and the third, he tires out. He loses both of them. It's a draw. Jimmy Flick, he starts off well, and then it looks like he's starting to get a little lethargic, and he gets caught with a flying triangle choke because he got lazy. The Richie Lang fight, it's much of the same. He gets tired. The longer the fight goes, he throws down. Do I think he's got a slight striking advantage over Buys? Maybe not technically, maybe not speed-wise, but he's got more power. And I think he could chin check him and hurt him. But if Buys just makes this a wrestling match right from the get-go, grind. By the second round, he'll tire. Then you can take over. Then you can snatch up a neck. So personally, I think Buys by submission, but Durden could win by knockout. And then just taking the fight not to go the distance, it covers you both sides. So that's my favorite prop for this one.
Seems like Alfred's liking the dog money on the inside the distance there for either side. But yeah, no, I do agree with you. And again, when I said on paper that Durden was probably the better wrestler, it is more so the American wrestling against South African wrestling. It's kind of
that's fair.
Yeah. You know, I mean, like, it's not often that we see any other country other than Russia maybe beating the USA in terms of wrestling accolades or anything like that. All right.
Oh, Iran. You know, those places are badass as well.
Now
right?
we're getting into the nitty gritty of it.
Going, but yeah, that's exactly. You got to go to these weird places like Mongolia and Iran, and then it's like, okay, they've got world class wrestling over there. But Azerbaijan, you know what I mean? But yeah, no, in terms of like this hemisphere, you're right. Even when like these guys will come out and it'll be like, oh man, this guy was a Commonwealth champ out of England. It's like, no, that's not that good. I can tell you that's not that good. You'd rather be a good D2 guy. You'd rather be a D1 All-American is just as good as winning in European countries. So I hear you 100%. I just hope that JP buys the cardio. More so than the wrestling, it's the cardio. I think that's going to be the real key factor.
Shout out to my guy Brady from DFS by the numbers. He was the one that actually posted this DraftKings prop that's out there right now, which is why I started this breakdown off by saying that keep my wife's name out your mouth. That's exactly what DraftKings has labeled this prop as, which is JP Bays to win by KO in rounds 1 or 2. It's plus 550 if it ends up hitting. So we'll see if he gets any motivation from that to try to go out there and finish the guy in Cody Durden that not a lot of people seem to like, right? Let's see how that plays out. All right. Next up, we got a men's bantamweight fight going down. We got Shayilan Paiva coming in at plus 125, going up against Sergey Morozov, who's coming in at minus 145. Last time around, Cody, Morozov let me down so bad against Douglas Silva and Andrade, where, you know, he's striking with him and having good success, but you got to believe at a certain time you got to start implementing a grappling. He falls in love too much with his hands, and I get it. You know, when you see Douglas flopping around the cage the way that he was after, you know, landing all those combinations and those strikes and almost finishing Douglas early in that fight, I get why you have more confidence in your hands, but you know your bread and butter is that grappling, and he stayed away from it for too long in that fight, and he ended up paying for it with Douglas eventually finishing him in that second round. Before that, pulls off a solid victory and upset win over Khalid Taha, which a lot of people, you know, really did expect him to get that victory. But after he did, you know, they gave him all the respect in the world, making him up, you know, I believe it was a minus 200 or minus 250 favorite over Douglas that night, but he ends up falling up short. Shayilan Paiva, on the other hand, that's a guy that I kind of had circled for a while now. I thought he was going to be the dark horse in the flyweight division, but ultimately he just can't keep making that weight class, so he's been forced to move up to 135 pounds. But that's where he got like probably his biggest win thus far in the UFC, having that majority decision victory over Kyler Phillips as a plus 230 underdog. He got a shit kicked in that first round, but managed to storm back in those second 2 rounds to pull off a win. Should it have been a draw? Probably, but he still ends up getting his hand raised that night, and I get to cash my plus 230 ticket on Paiva, so I'm not going to complain too much there. And then obviously he gets thrown in as a sacrificial lamb against Sean O'Malley back at UFC 269 in December. Ends up getting knocked out with about 18 seconds left on the clock in round one. But he's 3-3 now inside the UFC. 3 of those losses coming to Kai France, which he probably deserved to win that fight if we go back and watch that back. The Hajiri Bontorin fight gets stopped due to a cut. So unfortunate loss from there. Then he goes on a 3-fight winning streak, and then he loses to Sean O'Malley. I still believe in this kid. He's 26 years old. He's, full-time pretty much at Team Alpha Male now. And you see that work really coming together for him. And I feel like he could give a guy like Sergey Morozov some issues, whether it's being scrambly off of his back in terms of throwing up submissions or just getting back to his feet. And in my opinion, probably being the better striker of the two guys in this fight. I do think he can give Morozov some issues, but I do like the violence spot in this fight. I do think at a certain point, one of these guys is going to be able to rock the other or hurt the other, whether it's Morozov from on top with his ground and pound or Paiva with his hands and his length. I do think he'll be able to give Morozov plenty of issues here in the stand-up realm. So I do lean Paiva as a small dog, but I do also lean the Paiva inside the distance at plus 310. I think that's a damn good spot to capitalize on here. And you got to wonder what kind of form we're going to see Morozov come back with after suffering that devastating loss to Douglas last time around. Is it going to hinder his ability to go out there and execute a game plan, or is he going to go out there and just try to play it super safe, try to be heavy with that top pressure once he gets the takedowns? But I'm just not uber confident in the fact that he'll be able to land those takedowns consistently enough, nor be able to control the fight on the ground consistently enough to give Paiva issues here. So I'm going to go with the underdog here in Raulian Paiva, and I do think he ends up coming out with the finish, whether it's a KO or a submission. I would rather cover both sides here with Paiva inside the distance at plus 310. I do think he'll give Morozov some issues on the feet. That might result in a KO or a possible club and sub situation. But like I said, plus 310 already for the inside the distance, not a bad line regardless. So give me Paiva here, Paiva inside the distance. What about yourself?
Yeah, I honestly thought, just like you, this guy was going to be a terrorizer at 125 pounds because, he's just very, very large, right? And it goes out there and he can walk through his opponent's best punches. He keeps coming forward. He puts pressure on them. He's at Team Alpha Male now. His wrestling's getting ever so slightly better. He does get taken down in pretty much all of his fights, but he still shows off a 75% takedown defense. So it's not as if he gets taken down on the first attempt. You can grind him, but it looks like he has a bright future. Then he weighs in against Zhalgas Zhumagulov at 129, right? Misses weight by 3 pounds officially. Fights Zhalgas, got outstruck 62-50 and taken down twice. Out of 19 media members on MMA decisions, I think it was 15-4 in favor of Zhalgas. I scored the fight for Zhalgas. Most people scored the fight for Zhalgas, and yet they give it to Paiva. Now, Paiva did not look good in that fight, but of course, robbery, missed weight. You can't reward that. All the same, now they move him up to 135. Now, 135 against Kyler Phillips, he tries to do the same thing he always does. He walks face first into punches. He does not move his head. He does not cleanly defend himself. He's a liability. He could do it at flyweight, but now he's at 35. These guys are going to hit a little harder. You've seen him do this before against Rogerio Bontorin. If you remember that fight, he just walks face first into a pile of punches. Huge cut opens up over the eyebrow, and they stop the fight due to a cut. But it's the same thing. He's not moving his head. But Bontorin is not a heavy power puncher. So when he ran to Kyler Phillips, he got straight up caught bad in the first round. Should have been a 10-8. He is all sorts of hurt. Some refs would have stopped that fight. Should have been a 10-8 round. Whatever. Doesn't matter. Phillips tires after that. This kid fights valiantly his way back into it. Should have been a draw, but he ends up getting the win. Doesn't matter. You did see him get massively hurt there at 135 pounds, but oh well, Phillips has got some power. So nice seeing him against Sean O'Malley. Well, Sean O'Malley is a good striker. Absolutely. Very accurate puncher. Not the biggest one-hitter quitter guy unless he's fighting Eddie Wineland. You saw the Chris Moutinho fight where it's like he quite literally had to hit him hundreds of times before eventually getting the refs to stop it while he was still standing. And yet Paiva is so unbelievably hittable. He's such a big defensive liability that he just shoots it straight down the middle and knocks him out. Honestly, when I think about Sergey Morozov, he's got big power in his hands. He had Douglas D'Andrade hurt bad in that round, but he fell in love with his work. Instead of taking him down, try to playing it smart and trying to conserve your energy. He just went buck wild for the finish, got over aggressive, had an adrenaline dump, gets caught in the second, gets finished. What I do like about him is that he's well-rounded. He's not a contender. He's not someone that's going to challenge for a world title, but every aspect of his game is quite well-rounded. He's a good striker. He's a good wrestler. He's got good cardio. His durability is okay. Like, there's no one real glaring issue with his game. It's just there's nothing he does exceptionally well. What he does thrive at is if he takes over guys who do have holes in their game, he could exploit it. And in this case, Paiva's got holes in his game in that he defensively not sound, and he's got maybe questionable takedown defense. So if you're Morozov, you come off the Taha fight where you took him down 6 times. That was the success, was the takedowns. And then the Douglas D'Andrade fight, you fell in love with your striking. This, I expect to find a happy medium. I think he will strike, but I think he'll also mix in the takedowns. So if he does that, I think he's either going to catch Paiva and put him away inside the distance at some point, or he could take him down and give him a royal grinding. Super tempted to hit that Morozov by knockout at plus 550. Plus 550 for a guy that's going to walk straight head first right at you. Tempting to say the least. But I could also see him wanting to play this one a little safer and just going for those takedowns, mixing them in, and then hopefully winning the 29-28 decision, worst case scenario. But I will admit, right, I don't think I'm going to hit that decision prop because I got this gut feeling, and I know you're kind of on the same page, that inside the distance. Like, if Morozov's able to do what I think he's capable of, he's going to catch Paiva and knock him out. If Paiva does what you think he's capable of, he's going to probably weather that early storm and then come back and catch Morozov. Either way, this is probably a violent fight that won't see the 15 minutes. So, yeah, maybe I'm just going to hit this one from the fight doesn't go the distance standpoint.
I like it. Shout out to our guy JHK as well in the comment section here, giving us some love. But yeah, no, I agree with you. That not many fights we often see finish inside the distance, especially for these lower weight classes, bantamweight especially. But the way these guys match up, I think that we could see a finish transpire here. So let's see how it plays out this weekend. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We're looking at TJ Brown going up against Shayilan Nurmagomedov. In terms of odds, we're looking at minus 190 for TJ Brown and plus 165 for Shayilan. Very intriguing fight here because it's not often that you see TJ Brown as the heavy favorite, but once you actually start running the tape on Shayilan, you're like, okay, makes a little bit of sense, right? The guy still seems a little bit raw, even though he's, I believe he's 28 now, so he still has some improving to do. But in terms of the way that he matches up with TJ Brown here, got to believe that Brown is going to have pretty much the advantage in almost every single aspect of this fight. Like I'm trying to figure out where Shayilan could absolutely take advantage of TJ. Maybe if TJ's gas tank shows up here and it's not looking the greatest, maybe Shayilan can start to pull away later in this fight. But we got a 1-inch height advantage as well as a 3-inch reach advantage for TJ Brown. Got to believe that it comes with a lot of takedowns, right? He's averaging 4.5 takedowns per 15 minutes, and he has a decent amount of control time over those opponents. I believe last time around, was against Charles Rosa, where he landed 6 takedowns that night. It was a quintessential Charles Rosa blueprint to beat him, right? The TJ Brown knew exactly what he needed to do that night to stay out of the submissions, and he had good enough submission defense to be able to do that. And you should be able to grind out Charles Rosa for the majority of that fight. The Kai Kamaka fight, that was a close fight. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, I had money on TJ Brown that night, and I felt relieved once we got those scorecards read, and TJ Brown ended up being victorious that night. If I'm not mistaken, I think Kai Kamaka actually deserved the decision that night. And not to mention Kamaka, I believe he got cut after that fight, he did go up to that majority draw to Danny Chavez, and then he got cut, which I thought was a very egregious act by the UFC. Is what it is. Kai Kamaka doing his thing in Bellator now. But how TJ Brown matches up here against Shayilan, I think he lands takedowns. I think he outgrinds them. Shayilan, I think the only way he wins is if he catches TJ Brown with something, whether it's a Hail Mary KO or something like that. I'm not expecting him to pull off a guillotine choke like how Jordan Griffin beat TJ Brown back in February of 2020. That was a fight where TJ Brown landed 7 takedowns in 8.5 minutes, which is crazy that he was able to get that many takedowns. But that's his game, man. That's the way TJ Brown gets it done. Gets it to the ground, grinds his opponent, so either finishes them from on top or grinds it out over 15 minutes. I'm going to lean more so with the grinding out over 15 minutes. He's definitely the better fighter in this situation. I get why he's minus 200. Don't let the fact that it's TJ Brown scare you off from it. It is what it is. Shayilan is just not UFC level, as he showed Sean Soriano is not UFC level as well when he beat him in his last fight. But yeah, I'm going to go TJ Brown by decision, which currently sits at plus 125. What about yourself, Cody?
Yeah, I got TJ Brown, TJ Brown by decision as well. Although I'll admit, I think he wins this fight standing. I don't think he needs to go to the ground. I think he just sprawl and brawls his way to victory. Shayilan has zero striking, like unbelievably bad striking. His fight with Josh Kulabau, he landed 17 significant strikes. He presses for the takedowns, but he doesn't throw anything standing. Then the fight with Sean Soriano, this is unbelievable. He landed 17 significant strikes. It's the same shit, 2 straight fights. There's no ground and pound. There's no volume standing. There's no punching in combinations. He just waits to grab a hold of you and tries to press you into the cage. His wrestling is probably good by Chinese standards, but as we were talking about on like the world stage of things, his wrestling's not very good, right? So against Josh Kulabau, who's not really a wrestler, he took him down twice. Only he went 2 for 14 on takedown attempts in that fight. Very, very bad. And then the fight with Sean Soriano, that's the best Sean Soriano's wrestling's ever looked because he actually stuffed 4 of the takedowns, okay? He took down this guy twice. Sean Soriano scored 2 fucking takedowns on him. Unbelievable. He easily wins the first round, Sean does. Gasses. And still the second and the third were competitive. So, yeah, I would say with Shao Yang, what is he going to fall back on? If the wrestling's not good enough to take down TJ Brown, he's going to be forced to stand with him, and I don't think the striking's there. Brown, meanwhile, when he pushes too much of a pace, like the Jordan Griffin fight, when you're trying to do too much too fast, you probably gas yourself out. When you gas yourself out, you're going to leave yourself in a choke. Fight Metrics says Jordan Griffin attempted 3 submissions that night. Bullshit. He attempted like 9. That guillotine choke was literally slapped on for like 6 minutes before he finally stuck him with it. It's unbelievable. But I think Brown made some improvements. You learned something from that. Then the Danny Chavez fight, he allowed his lead light to completely get blown out before he switched to his wrestling. But you learn from that. And I got to think now he's fighting a little more conservative, right? I think he spent some time with James Krause. He's coming out with some better game plans. And truth be told, I think he's got a grappling advantage. He's probably got a slight wrestling advantage. But the striking advantage is something people aren't really zoning in on. So I think he just uses his wrestling in reverse this time around. Try to keep your separation from this guy. Sprawl and brawl and beat him up standing. If he grabs a hold of you and you fall to the ground, end up on top, sure, maybe get a takedown if you need to. But I think he's going to be comfortable with his stand-up. So Brown by decision. Same thing you got.
I love it. I love it. All right, let's just keep this moving along because we got the prelim headliner next, and I think this is pretty much where like the back to back fights are pretty much bangers the entire way here. Now, maybe with the exception with the heavyweight slop fest that we got sandwiched in that main card there, but this fight should be a fun one. We got Tafon and Nchukwi taking on Carlos Ulberg at light heavyweight. In terms of odds, we're starting to see Tafon start to pull away now, as this was a pick'em line earlier this week. Not to mention, Tafon was actually the plus 120 underdog. Now he's finding himself as the minus 125 favorite, plus 105 the return on Carlos Ulberg again. I'm kind of surprised that the line's a little bit like this close. You know, I really lean on the Tafon and Nchukwi side here, as I'm not the most impressed with Carlos Ulberg. Sure, technically speaking, he's the better striker. But when we're talking about MMA, I think Tafanka has way more paths to win this fight. He can go out there and, just strike with him, in my opinion. He might be at a little bit of a speed disadvantage, but I don't think that's going to discourage him from moving forward and using his stock ring style of striking, where he just throws power shots at you and just walks you down the entire time. Or he can go out there and mix in some takedowns if he needs to. I think he's strong enough to be able to get away with that and use that type of style to force Carlos Ulberg, or even try to, keep Ulberg on his toes and not just think that this is going to be a striking battle. We saw Tafon land 3 takedowns against Mike Rodriguez, 1 against Jun Young Park. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that he can actually go out there and do that. We saw him have a great performance in his last fight against Azamat Murzakanov until he ate that knee up the middle with 44 seconds into that third round. It was looking great. He was the underdog in that fight, if I'm not mistaken, around plus 160, and he was really putting it on Azamat. That was the first fight of the night, if I'm not mistaken, as well. And I remember having Azamat in a bunch of my lottery parlays, and I was sweating it. Luckily,
everybody.
Luckily he was able to pull it off and get the victory that night. But I think we'll see Tafon bounce back pretty well here against Carlos. I do think he'll be able to deal with the speed disadvantage he'll be at early in this fight, but as the fight starts dragging it on and as it becomes more of a dogfight, I think that we'll see Tafon start to pull away with this. I don't know if he'll 100% get the finish, I do think that this will be played at a bit of a tepid pace where, there won't be a huge significant amount of strikes, but I do think that Tafon will start to pull away the later that this fight goes. So I'm leaning on Tafon by decision, which is a whopping plus 375. I don't mind that line at all. I think that people, when they see these guys beside each other and kind of know their history, they just assume that they're going to go out there and get the knockout quickly. But I think they're going to respect the power of each other, and it's going to be a little bit more of a technical striking battle, which, again, early Ulberg might be able to get the upper hand, but the longer that this fight goes and the ability for Tafon to mix up this fight with takedowns, grappling, and the clinch, I think you'll start to pull away with it as this fight starts to go deeper. Before I swing it on over to you, Cody, I want to tee you up with one thing, because we have a special prop here, courtesy of Cloudbet, for this fight. Total significant strikes for this fight specifically. So combined significant strikes for both guys. I'll tee it on over to you, and then you can take over with your breakdown. Over under 80.5 significant strikes between the two. What are you thinking?
Yeah, well, it could be low volume. I'm leaning towards it being low volume. But again, I mean, I don't know. You don't know what to expect out of Ulberg, because I don't even think he's really comfortable with his game quite yet. Like, he's only 4-1 in MMA, but the two fights that he's had are like polar opposites of each other. The fight with Nchukwi, he landed 146 significant strikes within a round and a half. Like, he gassed out into the second and stopped throwing, but that's an abnormal amount of strikes, man. And as a result, he completely gassed himself. Then his next fight with Fabio Cherant, he didn't throw shit. Like, that was a terrible fight, man. Fabio Cherant just stared at him. Nothing happened.
Fabio gave him the fight that he needed, right? Like, that was exactly
100%.
What Carlos needed. Continue, sorry.
Yeah, Fabio never threw more than one punch at a time. I think he landed 13 significant strikes over the course of 15 minutes. Got taken down twice. Fabio just stared at him. So it allowed him to Ulberg to get a little comfortable and, find his kickboxing range. And of course, the guy has pro kickboxing experience. So when you give him that comfortability, he's going to be able to thrive on it. And this is just a sparring session, another day at the gym, no problem. Stay at range, outpunch this guy. 77-inch reach, use every bit of it, no problem. I think with Tafon Nchukwi, it's going to be a different case. Like, if you come out with hot offense right off the get-go, I want to knock this guy out, then you're going to open yourself up to gassing out. If you don't throw hot off the get-go and you don't put any pressure on him, he's going to start marching you down. This is the apex. It's a small cage. There's not a whole lot of room to run away to. And if Tafon Nchukwi is able to close that distance, he lands hard. But beyond that, the takedown. People just assume naturally, oh, it's a striker versus striker matchup. But really, for Tafon Nchukwi, he trains at a team Lloyd Irvin. I think he's only a blue belt under Lloyd Irvin, but Lloyd Irvin, one of the best jiu-jitsu coaches in the entire world. His guys are very, tight, very technical, very good on the ground. Is he a cult leader? Whatever. That's a discussion for another time.
I was wondering if you're going to bring that up.
I don't want to say anything, but yeah, all right, Lloyd Irvin may be a cult leader. Not my decision, okay? I'm not getting All-Stars lawsuit going here, right? I'm just going to say, read the reports yourself. But Tafon Nchukwi, if he ends up on top of you, you see how built this guy is? It's like a rock. Moving him, not very easy. Mike Rodriguez, slow Mike, but he's tall, lanky, rangy, good kickboxer. When you got Tafon on top of you, there's just nowhere to go. Ulberg would be very much in the same situation. Go back also and watch Tafon Nchukwi versus Willie Knight on the regional scene.
Yeah.
Pretty good ground game, man. Slick, takes his back, flattens him out, pounds him out with the TKO. But you can see that the guy's actually got some decent grappling to him. So this is going to sound crazy. I don't know if the price changed. As of yesterday on DraftKings Sportsbook, it was plus 1,800 Tafon Nchukwi by submission. Now, he never submitted anybody. I'll be the first one to admit that. But again, it's a styles make fight situation. He's never fought anybody kind of at that level of a Carlos Ulberg, 4-1 kickboxer, somebody that you could really put some pace on. With Ulberg, when you did see him against Nchukwi, he definitely gassed out. And when he gassed out, I'm not saying he quit, it's just his body language was not right. Now, if you got a guy on the ground and you're pounding him and he's tired and he's looking for a way out, is he just going to keep taking the punches, or is he not going to belly down and give up his back? It's what tends to happen. From there, you lock up the choke. Now, people again are going to say, man, that's crazy. And is it going to happen? I don't know. It's a flyer. But what I will say is we were dead on the money last week with Kevin Holland by submission. Why? Because he is a fucking black belt and he can submit guys. The problem is you need a situation where he can use his striking to set up that submission. And against Tim Means is a tough son bitch, but you can break Tim Means. You can put the pressure on him. And what you saw in Tim Means is a lot of his losses by submission. He got broken early, gave up the submission late. I almost feel like Ulberg might be in the same situation. But regardless, I think it's like slight underdog money for Tafon. I need a couple underdogs on this card. And so I'm going to go with Tafon Nchukwi to get the job done one way or another. Best prop on the card, though. I know I just said Tefon by submission. That's not your best prop. It's a plus 1,800 prop. But I would say best prop on the card, Tefon by decision. I just think the wrestling will be effective. He'll be able to get Ulberg down, and maybe Ulberg won't gas the way I think he will. But yeah, I mean, this is a prop. I don't think I'd take a prop, but I think like the money line on Tefon. Ooh, money's coming in on him, eh? He's going slight favorite now. Well, money going in the right direction. I think Tefon gets it up.
I love it. Great way to cap off the prelim card here for you guys, because we got another 6 fights coming at you and a solid main card. But before we get into that, shout out to the 120 live viewers that we currently have with us on this Thursday evening. We truly appreciate you guys hanging with us. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe below to show the all-star you love. And not to mention, shout out to Cloudbet as well for supporting the show. Link is in the description below. I got a ton more props to share with you guys on the back end of this show that they've done, especially just for us. We got one for the Magny Rakhmonov fight, and then we got a bunch that it captures the entire card pretty much. So shout out to Cloudbet. Link is in the description below if you want to, play any of those fancy props that they made just for our show. And then also shout out to betonline.ag. They'll match your initial deposit up to $1,000. 50% of it, I should say. Yeah, they're definitely one of the best sports books out there for MMA, because the vast majority of leagues that they cover, not just the UFC, Bellator, PFL, but they got all the regional fix for you guys, the Cage Warriors, the KSWs, the Octagon. I bet half of you guys don't even know there's a promotion called the Octagon, but there is out there in Europe somewhere. If I'm not mistaken, it's is it the Czech Republic?
Yeah, it is Czech Republic.
Czech Republic. There you go. So yeah, Ludovic Klein was the champion over there before he made it to the UFC. So make sure you guys go check out Bet Online, because you can get your degenerate action down with them over there. All right, Cody, let us get into the main card here, and we got a banger of a fight to kick off the main card. Your boy Chris Curtis taking on the BJJ phenom Rodolfo Vieira. In terms of odds, we're looking at minus 125 for Chris Curtis, plus 105 the return on Rodolfo Vieira. Now it's interesting with the Chris Curtis side of things, right? He was seen as that guy that's going to come into the UFC, maybe get a couple wins, but he'll likely get a losing streak going and then get cut. Nope. That's not what's happening right now, because he's on a 2-fight winning streak, both of which he was a pretty hefty underdog in. He comes in, defeats Phil Hawes on short notice as a plus 250 underdog, and then follows it up by knocking the crap out of Brendan Allen in round 2 as a plus 280 underdog. Now the betting public especially, is giving Chris Curtis the respect he deserves. He comes in a slight favorite against Rodolfo Vieira, who, it's pretty easy to break down Vieira fights nowadays, right? He either gets that sub early or he starts to gas down and you can take advantage of it later. But nope, not in his last fight against Dustin Stoltzfus, where, now we're really starting to see Stoltzfus. He's obviously been cut from the UFC, if I'm not mistaken, and he got third round subbed again by not Gegard, god damn it. I know Gegard Mousasi's fighting this weekend, but I meant Gerald Mearshart. So I'm gonna put an asterisk beside that for Rodolfo Vieira getting a third round finish, because I don't think Dustin really pushed him in that fight. We saw, I believe it was the entire first round from Vieira, he didn't shoot any takedowns. He just stuck with that 1-2 down the middle. It was obvious that he was just trying to keep his cardio in check. He didn't want to blow his wad as he normally does, and it paid off for him. He was able to go into that third round and get a submission victory. Unfortunately, he's not going to be able to do that here against Chris Curtis. You want to go out there and try to strike with Chris Curtis for 5 straight minutes? You're going to have to do a lot more than 1-2s down the middle, because my man Chris Curtis is going to be countering you effectively. He's going to be stalking you with his striking, and he'll more than likely be able to put your lights out as well. So Vieira, I don't think he's going to have as much success pacing himself this time as he did in that Stoltzfus fight, which is why I believe Chris Curtis is the rightful favorite here, and I do think he'll eventually find that knockout blow. The easiest ways of playing this fight are obviously Chris Curtis by knockout, which is minus 120, or Rodolfo Vieira by submission at plus 190. Any other outcome would be surprising to me. Now, here's a very interesting line on the totals here. The under 1.5 is currently sitting at minus 155. Under 2.5, which is an alternate total, is minus 365. And then I'm seeing all the way up to minus 900 on certain spots for this fight to not go to decision. Everybody knows what's going to happen here. There's going to be violence. There's going to be a finish. There's a reason that's that chalky. I'm leaning more so with the Chris Curtis side here. I do think he eventually finds that chin of Vieira. I think he is enough of a veteran to stop the submission attempts of Vieira should he get taken to the ground. He's only had one submission loss on his record, which was 11 years ago. Got to believe he's been sharpening up his BJJ skills since that time. I'm certain, like, there is absolutely a realm where Vieira could find the submission still. I'm not saying that Chris Curtis 100%, it's a lock of the night that he's going to stop any submission attempts coming his way, but I think he should be good enough in terms of stalling should he get into bad positions to eventually get back into the standing position and then eventually start getting his strikes off and eventually finding that finish. So, like I said, Chris Curtis, knockout is the way that I'm going to go. If you want to be a little bit cute with it and go Chris Curtis, poke that round 3 proper on. I'm seeing plus 600 up to a plus 1,000 for him to win in round 3, but I could see this coming even earlier. I think he's gonna. I think he's gonna find that chin of Vieira and eventually put him out here. So give me Chris Curtis to extend his winning streak to what is it going to be now? 1, 2, 3, 4,
8,
5, 6, 7. This will be his 8th straight victory and 3rd straight in the UFC if he can get his hand raised this weekend. I think he's going to. I'd be surprised if Cody doesn't pick Chris Curtis here, but I'm interested to still hear his breakdown for this fight. What are you thinking here, Cody?
Yeah, Chris Curtis, my boy. I wish different prop. Too bad All Stars. Just someone could release this prop for me. But yeah, you can get Chris Curtis in round 1 or 2 plus 110. You can get Chris Curtis in round 3 or decision plus 500. I want the Chris Curtis round 2 or 3, right? Because that's how I think it's going to play out. Of course, Action Man, my guy. Bias aside, you know what I ball out with this guy to the very end. Yeah, for sure. He cashed us really good against Phil Hawes as a plus 240 favorite. He cashed even better against Brendan Allen as a plus 260 favorite, both times scoring first round knockouts. And he's not known for his first round knockouts. He's actually a guy that is a little steam engine. He just builds momentum. He's kind of a bit of a slow starter at times, not in the UFC apparently, but he can fight 5 rounds. He's got excellent cardio. He's always in good shape. Takedown defense is solid. He puts himself in a position to win. I think that he's the real deal. If I had to shit on my boy, because I'd never shit on my boy, but if I had to put the slightest bit of hesitancy out there, I will admit 2 things. Thing number 1, he's a small middleweight, right? The guy's a welterweight. 100% he's a 170-pound fighter. But when they offer him Phil Hawes on short notice, it's like, I'm 34 years old. I'm a 30-fight pro. I'm completely broke. He said he had $50 to his name when he accepted the Phil Hawes fight. The Phil Hawes fight, remember the first time around, Phil Hawes pulled out. It was a short notice replacement. He didn't want to fight Chris Curtis right away. The UFC had to give him $1,000 to get him by till they could book it a week or 2 later. He's flat broke. Of course you're going to take that fight. And he knocks him out. $50,000 bonus. Kick ass. Now the UFC calls, do you want to fight Brendan Allen? Well, he actually used to train with Brendan Allen, so he's familiar with him. Knows he can beat him. So why not? Take the money. Goes out, knocks him out. $50,000. Great. Then he breaks his fucking wrist, right? He was supposed to fight Dricus du Plessis, and he broke his wrist. Pulls out of the fight. He's been rehabbing a wrist injury, and now they offer him this fight at 185. He's not putting himself in the best position to win. He's probably coming in slightly compromised, a little bit injured, up a weight class, taking on just like a ferocious beast of a man that's going to try to pull him to the ground and submit him. So in that regard, it's a little bit difficult. Also, when you look at the guys he's been fighting, Brendan Allen's not, that big physical specimen. Phil Hawes is, but Phil Hawes never shot the takedown. Kenny Robertson, Jerome Hatch, Juan Ramo Grano Medina, Kyle Stewart, Darren Smith Jr. Nah, these guys aren't good, right? Those guys aren't going to be able to put that same pace that Vieira could. And I think if Vieira gets Chris Curtis down, it could be a problem. But fuck all that noise. This is Action Man we're talking about. Been submitted once in his entire career, very long time ago, 3rd round. He works on his ground game. It's solid. He's got no idea in his head, or he's got no grand plan in his head and trying to take down Rodolfo Vieira and trying to submit him. No, it's going to be sprawl and brawl. Keep the fight standing, box him up. You saw Brendan Allen get a really nice bite on a takedown, pick him up, slam him to the ground. Chris Curtis, very explosive. Gets back up right away. The only times he does get taken down and held down is Magomed Karamov over in PFL. That dude was, when healthy, just a straight-up beast. And you're taking on a guy whose name's Magomed, you got a problem. You're taking on a guy who's got Magomed twice in his fucking name? Not good. Not good. Exactly. Chris Curtis loses that fight, but you got to keep in mind he took the second one on like a week's notice, and the PFL tournament, you don't have much time. Like, there's all these excuses you could make for him. I won't waste your time. Let's just break down how does this fight physically go. Okay, Rodolfo Vieira, as you mentioned, his fight with Stolfus, he didn't want to press the takedowns too much too early because he didn't want to gas himself out. So he started working on his newfound striking abilities. Thing is, he's not a good striker. He's very robotic. He's stiff. His timing is not very good. And I think that Chris Curtis is going to pick up the rhythm and start intercepting him. If he tries to push the pace and try to get the takedowns too early, he's going to overexert himself. He's going to get tired, at which point Chris Curtis will knock him out in the second round. If he stays at range, Chris Curtis is going to pick away at him until he probably knocks him out in the second round. If Rodolfo comes in excellent shape with an excellent game plan, is able to neutralize him for a couple of those rounds, then I think Chris Curtis will knock him out in the third round. But I think second or third round, Chris is putting him away. The line seems awesome. It was minus 135. I see money still coming in on Rodolfo Vieira. And I just go back to what has Rodolfo Vieira done for us, right? I mean, his BJJ accolades are a long time ago. And if you watch him in straight jiu-jitsu now, he's not the same guy he was 5 years ago. This guy was the best in the world at one point. Now, keep in mind this, okay? Him and Kenan Duarte, who's the best in the world now. A decision, right? And then they rematch 1 year later. Kenan Duarte subbed him in 2 minutes and 28 seconds, right? Because one guy's just doing jiu-jitsu now. The other guy's trying to pick up other skills. So Rodolfo's BJJ days are not the most elite anymore. His fights in the UFC, Saparbek Safarov, Oscar Pachoda, Dustin Stolfus, those are low level, right? Anthony Hernandez is a guy with good cardio, good pace. So what did Hernandez do? He just survived early, showed some resistance, fought back, and as a result, tired him out and choked him out. Unbelievable. Chris Curtis is not going to tire him out and choke him out, but tire him out and knock him out. So that's what I'm going with here. Action, man. We had two way harder fights in our last two fights with Chris Curtis. This should be the easier of the three, so don't let me down now. But I will admit, a wrist injury, and you're going to see a big size difference come weigh-ins, man. That's a little nerve-wracking.
In terms of actual metrics, in terms of the height and reach here, we got Curtis coming in at 5'10", Rodolfo Vieira at 6 foot on the dot. Actually 2-inch reach advantage as well for Chris Curtis. But Vieira is a thick human being, and we'll definitely see it, like you said, on the at the weigh-ins here. And a good question here from Fireside that I'd like your opinion on, Cody. What is the line on this fight without the fluffy fight had it not occurred?
Yeah, if the fluffy fight never occurred, then you'd be looking at it like, oh, this guy just takes guys down in the first round and submits them. But then what's the excuse with Dustin Stolfus, Like, he looks stiff, he looks robotic, and he takes all the way to the third round to submit him. In fact, he got outstruck like 60-47 against Dustin Stolfus. So now imagine he's getting outstruck by a heavy hitter who's a much better adequate striker who actually has the power in his hands. He probably gets folded over. I would have to say without that Dustin without the Fluffy Hernandez submission, maybe you got Rodolfo Vieira as a slight favorite, but the bookmakers have learned their lesson about giving you plus money on Chris Curtis. So one thing I will say, if you're a conspiracy theory guys, like I've met Chris Curtis on a number of occasions and he's not 5'10", man. So I don't know who measured him in the UFC or Tapology or whatever the case is, but like he's 5'9" with shocked up hair at the top.
I love it. Maybe they took that into consideration. Yeah, it seems like Tapology and UFC stats both of them have him at 5'10", but we'll see what the eye test once these guys actually face off with each other tomorrow once the weigh-ins conclude. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. We got a men's bantamweight scrap. This one is a heavy chalk favorite. Umar Nurmagomedov coming in at minus 1,200, taking on Nate Maness plus 650. Now, Maness is, no stranger to being the underdog and being able to pull off the upset. That's what he's had to do over his last 3 fights inside the UFC. Definitely in the last 2 fights. I believe the Johnny Munoz Jr. fight, he was a slight, I believe it was like minus 110, minus 115 or something like that. But he was definitely the underdog in his 2 prior fights to that, Luke Sanders and Tony Gravely. Now, neither of those guys are Umar Nurmagomedov, but you did see some things that you got to commend Nate Maness for in those fights, which was, takedown defense and the ability to get back to his feet and then just have confidence in his hands to eventually put away his opponents, because that's exactly what he was able to do. Again, it's going to be a completely different level of grappling he's going to go up against here with Nurmagomedov, but that's not what Nurmagomedov just has, right? He's a pretty good striker. I'd say maybe out of all of the Nurmagomedovs, maybe with the exception of Saeed, he's probably one of the better strikers from that crop of Dagestani guys, but he does such a good job in terms of mixing in that striking with his grappling. And he's fancy with it too. We'll see him throw the spinning shit and turn that into a takedown and eventually, start mauling his opponents from on top. He really likes the rear naked choke, of which he has plenty on his record. And I could definitely see that being a path to victory for him here against Maness. But the spot that I'm kind of feeling the most most has got to be the where is it here? Fight doesn't go to decision at -200. I know it's a little bit chalky, but I definitely see finishing opportunities from both sides. Maness obviously screwed me over in the last fight where he finished Tony Gravely. I was pretty big on Gravely that night. But we saw Maness obviously stop the takedowns there and eventually finish him off, I believe, in the second round. And if he could, stop takedowns and continue to get back to his feet against Nurmagomedov, he is live to eventually find that finish himself. And that KO at plus 1200 is what it pays out if Maness gets the KO. But I do believe Nurmagomedov deserves to be the favorite. Minus 1200 is, never advisable to parlay if you guys are like just looking to, if there are much better guys to parlay in the on this card and get better value off of than a minus 1200. Because if you add it to a parlay, how much does it really affect your parlay and your payout? And you're putting up quite a big risk here, especially for a guy Maness who can find that knockout, but also there's banana peel situations that we've talked about in the past too, right? Of course, Nurmagomedov should win this fight. I have him capped closer to 85% in this fight. I do think he's definitely going to run away with it, but Maness is a very tough opposition, and he continues to prove that time and time again. I still think Nurmagomedov wipes him in pretty much every aspect of this fight. Maybe the striking is a little bit closer than the odds actually indicate, but I do think that Nurmagomedov will successfully get his grappling going, and I think he'll eventually be able to find a submission at a certain point in this fight, which is why I like the fight doesn't go to decision, because it covers either outcome. It covers the Nurmagomedov submission, which is plus 100. It covers the Maness KO, which is plus 1200. But I like that assurance of no matter who gets the finish, my ticket still cashes. So give me the chalk on the fight doesn't go to decision at minus 200, and give me Nurmagomedov by sub at plus 100. Am I blowing too much smoke up people's asses about Maness here, or do you think he's a little bit liver than the line actually indicates?
Well, I mean, the dude's live because he's shown us so far in the UFC that there's absolutely zero quit in him, and he's going to fight till the end, and that becomes dangerous at some point. All three of his wins could easily be losses. The Johnny Munoz Jr. fight, nobody scored it for him. I mean, he got outstruck, he got taken down. Johnny Munoz lost a point, and still most people thought that Johnny Munoz should have won the fight, but Nate Maness gets the decision fair. Against Luke Sanders, he's getting lit up bad in the first round, and then Luke Sanders pulls a classic Luke Sanders, and Nate works his way back in. Tony Gravely's the same thing. He gets knocked down bad in the first round. The round ends. The ref should have stopped it. The corner runs in. They pick Nate Maness up. He don't know where he's at. They carry him back to the corner. They wake him up. They explain to him, dude, you're in a fight. He broke his jaw, right? And then he goes out and he beats Tony Gravely in the second round. If that is not some incredible shit, I don't know what is. This guy is Kentucky strong, man. That being said, it's like you see these just glaring holes in his game where it's like somebody's eventually going to take advantage. Now, him and his manager have been super adamant they want to fight Adrian Yanez. And after seeing what Yanez did last weekend against Tony Kelly, you don't want to fight these guys that are super precise, because if you're going to allow yourself to be hittable, and Nate Maness is hittable, I mean, his chin's good in that he hasn't gone all the way out, but you hit the ground like a sack of potatoes like that, it's a bit of a problem. This is where I think Umar will thrive on him. I was tempted again to potentially hit this Umar Nurmagomedov by KO plus 500. The problem is that Umar hasn't knocked anybody out in a really long time. But he's only 26, doesn't fight a whole lot. So again, it's not like he doesn't have the striking. You know he's a good striker. It's that he prefers to get the fight to the ground and choke the guys out the rear naked choke. And that's kind of what I think is going to happen here. I think stand-up-wise, Nate Maness is going to try to pressure him. He's going to try to bully him into maybe a clinch-type situation. Umar is just going to try to stay lateral, use his footwork. And I think at some point he's going to intercept Nate Maness, hit him with something, and hurt him. The difference here is when Sanders hurt him, he just kept trying to punch. When Gravely hurt him, he just tried to kept punch. When Umar hurts him, he's going to take the back and choke him out with the rear naked choke. So I think that's the difference. Discombobulate him, then stop punching, choke him out. I think that would be the best course of action. I think that's what he's going to go. No doubt Nate Maness is tough, 100%. Only lost to Taylor Lapalus, who's an absolute stud. And again, it's like a third-round side kick to the body that puts him out. So hurting him with strikes is definitely on the table. It's putting him away is a lot easier said than done, as his last two opponents can attest to. So in this situation, I think Umar does get it done. 9-1, it is banana peel pricing. You know, what's the worst case scenario? And there's a lot of worst case scenarios in MMA for sure. But unlike a Dean Barry who just flat out fucking sucks, but you're trying to bank on the fact that Mike Jackson's worse. Like, instead of a situation like that, at least you got Umar Nurmagomedov, who's pretty damn good. And, Nate Maness is good too. I just think that Nurmagomedov should be a minus 375, minus 400 favorite. They're going to give it to you at 9-1, a little bit tough to stomach. So you got to try to chase a prop. And yeah, I think in the inside the distance. You also mentioned the fight doesn't go the distance. A little chalky for my liking, minus 200. But again, if Umar is going to win, it's typically inside the distance. And if Nate Maness is going to win, it's taking a beating in the early going and then pulling off a little bit of magic down the stretch. So I like it. With Umar, though, I will say it's hard to get a full range of him, because if you watch the Sidamar Honorio fight, or even better, the Sayukub Kakramanov in the UFC now, he don't look that good, right? The problem is that it's 2018, so it's almost 5 years ago, and he's like 21 years old at the time, so he's super young. Now in the UFC, he fought Sergey Morozov. He took a 2-year-long layoff, fought Morozov, choked him out, took a 15-month layoff or a 14-month layoff, beat Kelleher, and now he's finally getting that quick turnaround. But again, at 26, he's only improving. His confidence is getting better. I think great things from him, and I think that Nate Maness is a good opponent to showcase his skills. So I got him getting the job done.
We see this with a lot of these guys that are very skilled and highly touted early in their careers, and they're just grinding out a lot of their guys, and they're showing their positional dominance in a lot of these grappling exchanges. But then you see them grow into their finishing capabilities, and that's what I think we're starting to see from Umar. And I think we see him continue that finishing streak, which I think will be 4 straight finishes if he can go out there and get that finish over Nate Maness. All right. Let's move on to the next fight here. We got 4 fights left. This one is in the lightweight division, and we're looking at Thiago Moises coming in as a minus 240 favorite, going up against Christos Giagos coming in as a plus 200 underdog. Thiago Moises is bouncing or attempting to bounce back from a 2-fight losing streak. The first of which was his main event slot against Islam Makhachev, where he got rear naked choked in the 4th round. That was July of last year. And then he followed that up with a quick loss, or a quick-ish loss, 3-minute loss to Joel Alvarez in November of last year, where Joel Alvarez gave him no respect. He marched through everything that Thiago Moises threw at him and just absolutely butchered the man, and eventually finished him in that fight. That was a big wake-up call for a lot of people on the Joel Alvarez side, which is why I think he got as much love as he did when he went into the Arman Tsarukyan fight. Then we saw Tsarukyan was just on a completely different level. Thiago Moises, his striking was really starting to come together, starting to catch up with his grappling or his jiu-jitsu, which was pretty much the high point or his strength coming into the MMA world. But you see, even in his regional days where he goes out there and outstrikes his opponents, he has great combinations, has a great head kick as well, which he's managed to knock out a couple of opponents with. But I do think that this is a great fight for him to showcase that he's still one of the better guys out there. I do think he's still top 15 worthy, and I do think he'll be able to showcase that here against Christos Giagos, who, the majority of Giagos' success comes from him being able to out-grapple his opponents, take them to the ground, stay out of submissions, grind them out, and just survive round 3, because his gas tank has looked like dog shit in the past, and I don't think he's really done much to improve what it could look like, especially in this fight against Thiago Moises. And we've seen Moises go 5 rounds should he have to. So I do believe he'll definitely have the cardio advantage in this fight, and I think he'll have the slight striking advantage. And then on the ground, I just don't think that Giagos will do enough to control him on the ground here. So I completely understand why Moises is this big of a favorite. Got to believe he's going to come in with the fire lit under his ass, especially coming off of 2 straight losses. I think he goes out there and just outworks Giagos over 15 minutes. There is the possibility that he can get that 3rd round finish, but we're only getting about plus 800 for Moises in round 3. But I do think we'll see Moises just touch him up for the majority of this fight, and then eventually win this fight via decision, which currently sits at plus 190 for Moises to take it on the judges' scorecards. Fight to go to decision is currently even money. I don't mind that either. If Giagos is somehow successful and Moises is comfortable just playing guard and trying to throw up submissions and try to get something off of his back, but nothing comes to fruition, Giagos could steal this on the scorecards by just grinding him out for 2 rounds. He is probably the better wrestler in this spot, but I just don't think he has the cardio nor the durability to keep that up for 15 minutes against a guy of Thiago Moises' skill set. So a little bit iffy for me to bet Thiago Moises at minus 240. I do think he's the better fighter here. I do think he should be the favorite, but I do see this fight going the full 15 minutes. Like I said, fight goes to decision at even money intrigues me, but Moises to win by decision at plus 190 probably has my ear the most here. How about yourself?
Yeah, I got the exact same thing. I think Moises wins. Moises wins by decision, plus 190, good price, but also got fight goes the distance. as like a little bit of a safety net, right? Because if Giagos is going to win, he's not going to knock him out. He's not going to submit him. So if he wins, possible, but it's going to be him front running the first 2 rounds and gassing it and holding on in the third. Whatever, we're going to hit that plus 100. If Moises is able to survive that first round, I think he'll survive it. But lose the first round, come back, win the second and the third over a tired Giagos, then he wins, picks up the decision, plus 190. So I like it from both sides. And I can't actually add much more than what you said. Christos Giagos is who he is. I think he'd be a phenomenal fighter if he had better cardio, but everything he does is just very explosive, very athletic, puts everything into everything he does. And as a result, he tends to gas out rather quickly. He's gassed out against bad opponents too. The Mizuta Hirata fight, 3rd round, he's holding on. Carlton Maness, the 3rd round, he's holding on. Like, these are low-level guys, man. But if you can't take them out within the first 2, he completely gasses himself. So it's a risk-reward kind of situation. He's entertaining, he likes to go and put it on, but for the most part, it's like he got to get that quick finish or else he's going to fall completely apart. The other thing is that he relies on his wrestling predominantly to get the job done. He just does not seem comfortable with his stand-up. I mean, can he strike a little bit, but he does not want to be in a prolonged striking battle. When he gets hit, he does not wear it particularly well, and he's very, very, very low volume. You look at, again, a lot of his fights, these are 15-minute fights, okay? He landed 28 against Chris Wade. He landed 31 against Mizuta Hirata. He landed 47 against Damir Hadzovic. Another fight he gassed out, by the way. He landed 31 against Carlton Maness. These are 15-minute fights, and he can't break 50 significant strikes landed in any of them. The Sean Soriano fight, he got his ass kicked in the first round. But most people who fight Sean Soriano lose the first round. And then they come back and beat him. So that's all well and good. But again, he was not looking good early, mostly with that stand-up. And then, of course, with Arman Tsarukyan, he just gets knocked out in 2 minutes. So he's not going to come into the Moises fight looking to stand up. He's going to look to bull him to the ground. Is he capable of doing that? Sure. But Moises is good off his back, right? Moises has also got a decent get-up game, not against Islam Makhachev, but against lesser guys than him. He'd get back up. And he was able to continuously get back up. I think he will land the better strikes. The more tired Giagos gets, the harder the takedowns will be to come by, the more that the striking will start to separate the two of them. And I think that Moises will just ever so slightly edge out. He could win a 30-27, but I feel more comfortable saying he'll win a 29-28 en route to a decision, which we would hit plus 190 on. If fight goes the distance, another plus 100, we'd all be okay with that.
I like it. I like it. All right, let's move on to the next fight here. And I never thought we would ever see Alan Baudot as a favorite in the UFC, but here we are. He's taking on Josh Parisian. Baudot coming in as a minus 120 favorite, plus 100 the return on Parisian. So not the biggest of favorites here for Baudot, but given how they match up in this fight, I completely understand why he is where he's at. Technically speaking, he's probably the better striker of the two. Parisian probably has better experience, but he's a guy that heavily relies on his power. Not the greatest with his takedowns, I believe, in his UFC career, including the fight that he had or 2 fights he had on the Contender Series. He's only completed 1 takedown, and that was against Roque Martinez, but he has an abysmal 11% takedown accuracy rate. On the flip side, for Alain Baudot, he's on a 3-fight losing streak right now. You could call it 4-fight losing streak if you want to include that Todd Stout fight that he had, which he for some reason has as a win on his record. For those that are not in the know, Todd Stout finished him in the 3rd round via submission, something that Todd has never done in his MMA career to begin with. And then he tested positive for weed in that fight. And the Quebec Commission, as crooked and weird as they are, they decide to turn that not to a no contest, but to actually a win for Alan Baudot that night. So if you have any of your predictors or analysts or handicappers telling you otherwise, they definitely haven't watched the tape, nor do they know what they're talking about. But Alan Baudot in this spot, this seems like the most favorable fight for him he's had in a while, right? Striker versus striker primarily, but you got to believe that Baudot probably has more pop on his shots. He could probably land on the chin of Parisian more often than Parisian will be able to land on him. I think he'll also have the slight speed advantage, which will likely be the difference maker in this fight. And I think at a certain point, he's going to be able to find that chin of Parisian and put him down and out. I'm not a big Parisian guy. I'm not sure why he was always like this, a solid favorite. I believe he was what was he against Parker Porter? He was minus 230 against Parker Porter, loses that fight. He was obviously a big favorite here again. He was minus 145 against Roque Martinez, barely scrapes that fight out. Plus 155 dog to Don Tomei. So we're really starting to see what kind of fighter he is. And I feel like a guy in Alan Baudot, who's the much better striker, will be able to continue to, exaggerate how bad Josh Parisian actually is. Unless Parisian, really goes out there and wrestles heavily, I still don't think if he takes that approach that he will be that successful and actually be able to control Baudot on the ground or get a submission on the ground against Baudot. So I lean the Baudot side here. I see the over 1.5 is currently sitting at -185. I think a lot of people are expecting this to be a slow, plodding, heavyweight slop fest where this goes into the second and third rounds. But I'm actually of the other belief, man. I think that Baudot will eventually find that chin of Parisian early in this fight, put him down and put him out. I think that he's that much better of a striker than what Parisian brings to the table. Yeah, give me Baudot early here. Baudot KO currently sits at +160. Baudot in round 1 +350. Baudot KO round 1 is +365 on FanDuel if you guys have access to that. Yeah, even though under 1.5, man, I might be that cheeky guy here that takes the +155 and thinks that we get an early finish here. I think a lot of that is front loaded on the Josh Parisian side because a lot of his fights have crept into that third round. But I think the way that he matches up with Baudot here will likely give us fireworks early in this fight, and I think we'll see Baudot come out with his hand raised as well as his first ever UFC victory. What about you, Cody?
Yeah, I mean, this is a kind of a pass fight for me. I could see where you're coming with Alan Baudot. I had the guy completely written off. Todd Stout not only choked him out, first time he ever choked out anybody, but he kicked his ass, man. It was not even competitive. Alan Baudot looked like shit at 205 pounds. Then he moves up to heavyweight against Tom Aspinall, and everybody and their mother fades him, and he looks like shit. Turns out Aspinall's a beast, but we all knew it was going to happen. So then I faded the absolute shit out of him against Rodrigo Nascimento. Dude, he looked good in the first round, man. He won the first round against Nascimento, but he landed 50 of 60 significant strikes in the first round. In the second round, gassed out. He landed 10 in the second round, and then himself got knocked out. So he didn't pace himself properly. He went got balls to the walls in the first and gassed himself out. Then the fight with Parker Porter. Again, I loaded up heavy on Parker Porter. Parker Porter was on my top ticket, right, of the parlays. All I do is fade Alan Baudot. And again, he actually looked a lot better against Parker Porter. Striking was a lot better. He's got some decent enough hand speed, a little bit of pop. But you did see when he got taken down, he's got absolutely no get-up game. He's just got nothing off of his back. So, on one hand, you do see some small improvements out of him. He is from the MMA Fight Factory Paris, which, of course, produced Francis Ngannou once upon a time. Now more so the Lapalus brothers and Cyril Gahn and those guys.
Nasruddin.
Yeah, of course. Jinx, Yomi Soda. Which I can't really drink soda right now because of my strep throat, but eventually, we'll get together. But yeah, it's like you do see those improvements out of him. There maybe is something there, but he's an undersized heavyweight, regardless of the fact that he's weighing 250 pounds. Like, this is a guy that could make 205 if he's in better shape. His striking is really not all that good, and his volume's not really that good. He only landed 55 against Parker Porter. He's trying to hold back. The fight prior against Nascimento, he lets his hands go, but he gasses himself out. That's all problematic because Josh Parisian is terrible. He's not very good. But for a big guy, man, he keeps coming at you. Like, that's one thing about him. When he fought Parker Porter, it was just a dreadful fight, but a slugfest, right? I think Parker Porter lands 120. He lands 110. They go back and forth. The fight with Roca Martinez, not very pretty, but he does get a takedown. I think there's little glimpses here and there of not a good fighter, but there's little glimpses here and there of skills that he could actually use in a practical situation here against Alan Baudot. I mean, if Alan Baudot is the favorite against anybody, my natural instinct is I got to hit the fade button and just go dog or pass, simple as that. But how would Josh Parisian theoretically win this fight? On the volume, stand up. I think Baudot's probably a better striker, maybe a little more crisp, but does he have that big knockout power? He's not knocked out anybody in the UFC. He was knocking out random Japanese guys back in the day, but I couldn't say anything's really of a high level, I don't think. So Parisian can take a decent enough punch, and if he can take that punch early and just wear on him, it's going to be a problem. In terms of being in the clinch, Parisian likes to lean on guys in the clinch, and when you're carrying a guy that's 262 pounds and you're a natural 205er, it'll tire Baudot out. So if Parisian can come forward, be the aggressor, let the volume go, and then hopefully trip him down, take him to the ground, you can just do it twice. He's not going to get back up. Therefore, you could squeak out a couple rounds, and, I could see Josh Parisian getting the job done. But not a pretty fight, not something you'd want any investment in. And to be perfectly honest with you, when I look at this card, it's a lot of favorites. I agree with a vast majority of these favorites. Need a couple underdogs here and there. And if I was going to fade any favorite, it'd have to be Alan Baudot, right? So keep it really low on the list of priorities this week, but I'm going to go with Parisian ever so slightly.
Yeah, you're definitely not gonna catch me betting the -120 on Baudot, but I am intrigued by the props here on the finishing props because I do think he's the better striker. But we'll see how it plays out once these guys actually throw down this Saturday. All right, 2 fights left. Co-main event, high stakes here in the welterweight division. We got Neil Magny giving Shavkat Rakhmonov his first tough test since coming into the UFC, but Rakhmonov still -450 favorite in this fight, +350 to return on Neil Magny. I'm a big Neil Magny guy, right? There's fights where I feel like he's very solid. He's a guy that can go out there and spring the upset in certain situations, like he did in the Li Jing Liang fight, or he's a guy as a solid favorite who, not as recently he's been making a little bit closer than it should be, but in past fights he's really made it look like he should be the obvious favorite. But the Max Griffin fight shows off his veterancy there. I believe he dropped the first or second round, but managed to rally back and win that third round to win that fight. We know what we're getting out of him, right? Cardio, pace, nonstop movement, decent distance striking, good dirty clinch work. But his grappling defense is really where he starts to fall short. That's where guys are really able to take advantage of him, and that's why they're able to get the victory in most of their whenever he goes up against those kind of guys. Just for example, like the last time he lost, Michael Chiesa lands 4 takedowns in a 5-round fight and controls that fight for 15 minutes and 21 seconds. There were other guys. I'm trying to look back. Rafael dos Anjos obviously gets that arm triangle choke victory in the first round back in 2017. But besides those 2 losses, his only other loss was that Santiago Ponzinibbio fight where he got his legs torched up for about 4 rounds before he eventually succumbed to it and then gave up that knockout victory for Santiago. So he's gotten finished in 2 out of those 3 fights dating back to 2017. But in the midst of that, he's picked up 7 victories as well, right? Against guys like Carlos Condit, Craig White, Li Jing Liang, Tony Martin, Robbie Lawler, Jeff Neal, and Max Griffin. He still has what it takes to give guys a tough day at the office. Unfortunately, Shavkat Rakhmonov has everything that you would want when you're going up against a guy like Neil Magny. He has a grappling advantage. He should be able to drag this fight to the ground. I think let me just quickly look at the how they match up in terms of length here, because they're both quite long and tall. 6'3" for Neil Magny, 6'1" for Shavkat, so that's a 2-inch height advantage for Magny, and then also a 3-inch reach advantage for Neil Magny at 80 inches here. But that still doesn't deter me from thinking that Rakhmonov will likely be able to get those double underhooks, drag this fight to the ground, and then just do work from on top. Magny is definitely one of those guys that's in the wrestling room. I follow one of his coaches, Cody Donovan, very closely, and more often than not, you see whenever he posts an IG story, they're in the wrestling room trying to really work on that game for Neil Magny. But at this stage of his career, how much better is he going to be able to get in terms of being able to keep fights upright and then do his work from there, especially against heavy grapplers like a guy like Shavkat Rakhmonov. So I'm not running to the betting window to bet Shavkat at -450, but I do think that this is likely his fight to go out there and just drag this fight to the ground over and over again until he eventually opens up a finishing opportunity for himself, whether it be submission, whether it be TKO from on top. I think Shavkat gets him out of there. I'm not 100% sold on Shavkat yet, but I'm just waiting for the proper opportunity to, bet against him with a more reliable fighter. Neil Magny, stylistically speaking, does not match up well at all here against Shavkat. Now, before I pass it on over to you, Cody, special Cloudbet prop for this fight specifically, over under 2.5 successful takedowns from Shavkat Rakhmonov. What are you thinking here?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to try to take down Neil Magny. Like, I think he wins the fight. Yeah, well, just honestly, the way I think that Neil Magny would win this fight is up against the cage. Like, he's got really good cage control. He's good at kind of neutralizing guys' length and just kind of digging underhooks, going a wrist lock, or like basically just a lot of neutralizing tactics. But I think he can wall install a guy pretty good. He's always kind of been good at that. Again, like you mentioned, he's working a lot on his wrestling. And typically when Neil Magny shows up and wins fights, pulls off these upsets, is competitive, he can get his wrestling going. So for Shavkat Rakhmonov, I think keeping your distance is going to be the key here. Keep him at bay, use your long-rangey striking. Rakhmonov's got 16 wins, right? They're all inside the distance. Like, the guy's an absolute finishing machine, and I think he can finish Neil Magny, but certainly being in a clinch battle with him is probably not, the best path to victory. I also think with Shavkat Rakhmonov, he's been perfect inside the UFC, but where have you maybe seen him struggle a little bit? In the Alex Oliveira fight, right? Where Alex Oliveira controlled him up against the cage for the vast majority of the first round before he locked in that guillotine choke. So if I'm Neil Magny in his camp, I'm saying the same thing. Neil, don't stand at range with this guy. You know, shooting from a distance is going to be tough because he's hard to take down, but just press him up against the cage, dig your underhooks. You know, if you can trap one of the wrists, you know, just anything you can do to keep him flustered up against the cage and not landing on you would be the key. Now, I'll agree, like you said, Neil Magny's still getting some quality victories, and you know, he beat Jeff Neal and he beat Carlos Condit and this, that, and the other. But you got to kind of judge these guys by their last fights, because in Neil Magny's case, he ain't getting any younger. I mean, I believe he's 34 years old. He's starting to get a little bit of mileage on him. He's starting to get up there in not only years, but fight years more so than anything. So I got to go back to that Max Griffin fight. He looked like shit. He got dropped by Max Griffin. He got outstruck by Max Griffin. His wrestling did not look good against Matt Griffin. That was a bad fight. Neil Magny won. I was happy he won. He greased it out, but not a very good performance. When I think about him versus Rakhmonov, he's going to run into all the same issues, and then 10 times 10, right? If he's struggling with Max Griffin at distance, he's going to struggle big time with Rakhmonov at distance. If he's struggling to consistently get Max Griffin to the ground, he's going to struggle with Rakhmonov. And of course, Rakhmonov a better grappler as well. So I just get the impression that he's going to at some point catch him clean and put him away. Neil Magny hasn't been finished in quite some time. I think the last time he's been knocked out with Santiago Ponzinibbio. Yeah, 2018. So 4 years ago, he got knocked out by Santiago Ponzinibbio. Before that, Lorenz Larkin. But if you remember those fights, they just come at him hard. Larkin just came right at him and just bull rushed him, knocks him out. Ponzinibbio, it's in the fourth round, but chips away at him and then eventually just closes the pocket, closes that distance, gets on him. I feel like Rakhmonov's just another level. Like, this guy will challenge for a title. Even if Neil Magny defeats him, that doesn't deter my opinion on the guy. Like, he's probably going to have to lose a few times, go through those trials and tribulations, the learning experience, get better, all this, that, and the other. But I really think this guy's fine. He's polished. I liken him to a Damir Ismagulov, who I'm a huge fan of. The difference is Ismagulov is precise and has to do everything right over the course of 15 minutes because he doesn't really have any finishing ability, right? This guy, not the case, man. If he hits you with his laser precision accuracy, you're done. Because one, he's got the accuracy, but two, he's just got a whole lot of power behind it. His submission game, opportunistic. I don't want to see him fishing for submissions too much against Neil Magny, but again, it's on the table. The biggest concern is just don't allow yourself to get dragged into this clinch battle up against the cage. Separate, strike. The one thing that gives me a little bit of confidence is judges haven't really been scoring clinch battles all that effective the last little bit, unless you're going to do some damage with it. And I think the damage and the more meaningful shots are going to come from Shavkat Rakhmonov. So, yeah, I got Rakhmonov to get the job done. I'm leaning towards that knockout prop inside the distance. And, I think he's a top contender. I think he's a really bright prospect.
Yeah, Rakhmonov inside the distance currently sitting around minus 160 on certain spots. I am leaning more so the submission prop here at plus 275. But if you guys are in line with Cody's thinking with the KO, you'd be getting about plus 150 on that line there. All right. Shout out to my guy, Justin Villegas, saying here, but Magny is the Chukagian of decision fights. He's unfortunately not going to be able to Chukagian his way to a decision victory here, especially against the guy who wears a fucking wolf as a hat. If he wants that.
Yeah. Now I know, like, those badass Dagestani guys are wearing like sheep hats. Like, this guy's got a motherfucking wolf hat. What do you think is going on backstage? This guy's ready to go.
Exactly. All right. That brings us to our main event. Shout out to the 140 live viewers hanging with us on this Thursday afternoon. Smash that like, hit that subscribe. Remind the All-Star folks that you guys love having us on their channel. And make sure you guys drop a comment as well. Let us know what your favorite props are for this card. And we will also be sure to keep plugging those Cloudbet props for you guys as well, which I'll do after we finish up this main event. But also shout out to betonline.ag, another big sponsor for the show that's allowing you guys to get us free on a weekly basis. Link is in the description below. They'll match your initial deposit up to $1,000. Take full advantage of them. They are definitely one of the best MMA sports books out there. The only thing better, I gotta say, Cody, is Cloudbet, because of how much they're cooperative with us in terms of the props that we want to get out there, and to make it even special by partnering up with the show. All right, main event time. Streaking prospects about to collide here this weekend. We got Arman Tsarukyan coming in as a minus 280 favorite, plus 235 for the former KSW champion Mateusz Gamrot. Very fun fight here. One of the bigger tests for our Arman Tsarukyan since coming to the UFC. Obviously, none get bigger than his UFC debut against Islam Makhachev, but he made a very good account of himself that night, which is why people are very high on him, which is why he was a minus 160 favorite over Olivier Aubin-Mercier, minus 240 favorite over Davi Hamosh, minus 700 favorite over Matt Frivola, minus 850 favorite over Christos Giagos. There was a little bit of hype on Joel Alvarez in his last fight, but he was still the minus 280 favorite that night, and he has that same price tag here against Mateusz Gamrot, who was definitely a much more a tougher opponent than Joel Alvarez, in my opinion, because he's a much better fighter overall than what Alvarez brings to the table, right? We know Alvarez, he goes out there, gets that finish early, or guys are able to grind him out and eventually either finish him like Arman did, or grind him out, take him to a decision like Damir Ismagulov did. But here with Mateusz Gamrot, solid grappler, decent striker, but you got to believe that Arman Tsarukyan will likely be the one that's ahead of the grappling exchanges, which is where I think the majority of this fight will take place. I would honestly be surprised if either guy goes out there and gets a submission victory over the other one, but I'm expecting this to remain relatively competitive over 5 rounds. And even though Arman is in that minus 280-ish range, I do believe he is the rightful favorite. I do believe he'll come out with his hand raised here. But I think a perfect example of why we play odds and not fighters is this past weekend of Calvin Kattar and Josh Emmett. We knew it was going to be a close fight. We knew Kattar deserved to be the bigger favorite, or sorry, to be the favorite in that fight. Should he have been a minus 240 favorite? Who knows? But the fact that the fight played out as closely as most people predicted it to, betting wise, the money should have been on the Josh Emmett side. I got caught with my hand in the cookie jar of having Calvin Kattar in a couple parlays, lottery tickets and all that type of stuff. But Josh Emmett made that fight as close as most, some people expected that to be, and proved that odds do matter at the end of the day, right? So it's tough for me to go out there and plant my flag in the ground and say that Tsarukyan is, the lock of the night or anything like that, especially at this price tag. But I still favor him to win, man. It's very tough to pass on a guy that has such a complete grappling game that Tsarukyan has. He's so good at implementing it. His cardio seems to be on par, right? This is going to be the first time he's going to be forced to go 5 rounds. So we'll see how that holds up with an extra 10 minutes of competing. Whereas on the Gamrot side, he's done the 5-round thing a couple of times in KSW. So he already has that experience coming into this fight against Arman. But it's hard for me to pick against Arman in this situation. I do think he'll be the better wrestling MMA fighter here, essentially. I believe he'll be able to get those takedowns when he needs to. I think he can get some control time going from on top, but I think he's going to have to land multiple takedowns in this fight to find success and to get his hand raised here. This will be a tough one for him, and it'll definitely be a test, considering that he's going to have to fight 10 minutes longer than he's used to here. But I do think he's up to snuff here. I do think there's a reason a lot of people expect him to fight for a title in the very near future. And I think this is pretty much another point for him to go out there and prove that against a very tough opponent in Mateusz Gamrot. If this remains a 50-minute or 25-minute kickboxing fight, I gotta lean Gamrot, as I do think he's the slightly more complete striker here. But this is MMA, Cody. There's a reason it's MMA and not just kickboxing. And I think for that reason alone, Arman will be able to drag this into grappling more often than not and get his hand raised. The spots that I'm liking, I do think this goes the full 25 minutes. Both these guys are coming off of finishes. I think Gamrot's on a finishing streak right now, if I'm not mistaken. But fight goes to decision at minus 105. I don't mind that. Over 4.5, minus 120. I don't mind that either. I expect it to be competitive. I don't expect many finishing opportunities for either side. Give me Tsarukyan by decision, which is currently plus 170. What are you feeling about this fight?
Yeah, I'm nervous about this fight. I just don't think the line's right. I mean, Tsarukyan's everybody's darling. I agree. I think he's an ultra prospect. Fights Islam Makhachev. He was 22 years old when he fought Islam Makhachev. Since then, he's just getting better and better. His grappling's good. His wrestling's good. His cardio seems to check out. Durability's on point. His last 2 fights, the Giagos fight and the Joel Alvarez fight, you see definitely improvements to his striking game. And now he's got that knockout power to boot. So, yeah, there's a lot of great things that you can like about Arman Tsarukyan. Definitely a very bright prospect, but is it a little too much too late or a little too much too soon? He's only 25, right? Now he's getting slotted into a main event spot, 5-round fight against Mateusz Gamrot, a 2-division world champion over in KSW who has fought 5 rounds, who is extremely durable. He's never been finished. He's got 1 career loss, and it was a highly debatable split decision. The guy's an animal. I talk about grappling advantage. Oh, this kid's a better wrestler than Mateusz Gamrot. Well, how do you figure? Like, Mateusz Gamrot's an excellent grappler. Shows a 100% takedown defense in the UFC. That's not the problem. He hasn't really fought great grapplers in the UFC. But on his KSW days, like, nobody outgrapples this guy. He's a stud. He competed at the ADCC against Gary Tonon and went 7 minutes with the guy. He's a high-level BJJ black belt. His ground game's on point. His wrestling's on point. His fight with Carlos Diego Ferreira is a third-degree Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Gamrot took him down whenever he wanted, 4 times. Took him down, grinded on him, leaned on him. That's all good stuff. So if you believe that Gamrot can win a striking battle against this opponent, all he's got to do is keep the fight standing. Well, then, yeah, he's a live underdog, because I'm kind of thinking the same thing. Gamrot's striking's not good, but it's not bad. He doesn't throw a whole lot of volume. He's kind of one and done, maybe a 2-punch combination at most. But with Tsarukyan, I haven't really seen him fight 5 rounds. I haven't seen him, have to throw a whole lot. The fights with Joel Alvarez, he knocks him out. You can get away with only landing 30 significant strikes and the guy topples over. Against Gamrot in a 5-round fight, you're going to have to hit him 100 significant times. I just don't know that the kid's going to go out and do that. In terms of the wrestling, can he go out there and take Mateusz Gamrot down? Potentially, sure, but he's going to have to work for it. It's not going to be easy. And I mean, this is a guy that took down Matt Frevola 10 times because Matt Frevola would just get back up, right? So who's to say Gamrot's not going to do the same thing? Now, Gamrot at his best, 5-round cardio, and that's going to be a real big factor here. Look at the Gruom Kudelic fight. Loses the first. Second round's a little closer. Third round, it's all Gamrot. Guy's got great cardio. But I'll admit that last fight with Carlos Diego Ferreira, it was a lot of grappling in the first, and in the second, Gamrot looked tired. Now, he does finish him, rib injury. I don't know. Maybe it was a TKO due to punches. Maybe it was that rear naked choke he slapped on as the ref was trying to say, dude, stop. But regardless, it was like Gamrot is sturdy. He's durable. He can wrestle. He can grapple. He's got a good chin. He may have a slight striking advantage. He's been in those world championship rounds before. Why is he this big of an underdog? It just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. So I feel like I want to go Tsarukyan, but I feel like the line should be Tsarukyan minus 135, minus 145. Like in my mind, this is a close fight, and the line doesn't seem to agree with that. So the 2 ways I would look to attack it would be I would try to improve Tsarukyan's price tag by going him by decision. But beyond that, just the fight goes the distance. I think if Gamrot wins, he's going to neutralize him, outstrike him ever so slightly on the feet, stuff the takedowns. And if it goes the other way with Tsarukyan, he could hurt Gamrot early. We saw Gruom Kudelic hurt him early. We saw Carlos Diego Ferreira land a couple decent right hands. Like maybe he could hurt him, but putting him away is a way different animal. So yeah, I kind of have to see it go down in real time, but I'm leaning towards like a slight lean towards Tsarukyan, and that the fight goes the distance, that being the best prop. The way I may attack this thing, and last week I should have done the same shit. Cater's on the top line, right? We like Cater. Is Cater your best pick on the card? No, but it's the main event, so we can hedge out. The problem was goddamn Kyle Daukaus. And when he shit in the pie on the very first fight on the fucking card, that ruined a lot of the parlays. So now I just had to let it ride. I had to let it ride on Calvin Cater, and I thought he won, but he didn't. So it's okay. Like, it's something you have to come to terms with. Don't be one of those guys that messages Julian Marquez like, "What the fuck are you doing, man?"
Yeah, that was such a dick move.
The lowest of the low. It truly is. So I'm not gonna cry over spilt milk or whatever. He won, he lost. Tyson Chartier, he's right pissed about it, but it was a close fight. That's the bottom line. It's a close fight. Could go either way. The lines were not necessarily right. All that shit you said, it's exactly true about this fight. If it's going to be a close fight and it's going to be competitive, the other guy's is going to have moments. It really comes down to who the judges are. You could end up getting a bad split decision going the other way. This is not lying like a pick'em fight. It's lying like Tsarukyan's going to smoke right through him, and I think a lot of that is bias. I think a lot of that is, man, I really like this guy. He fought Islam Makhachev competitively in his debut, and since then he's been a wrecking machine against a certain level of competition. Gamrot will bring out the best of him, and we'll see if he sinks or swim when that becomes the case.
I love it. It's a big show me spot for both guys. They have a plot or the stage to go out there and showcase. They're both the main event. Now's their time to lay claim to that top 5 of the division, because whoever comes out on top here, I'd be surprised if we never see a top 5 ranking beside their name in the next 6 months after this. All right, that is a wrap on the breakdowns here. Let's get into the Cloudbet special props that they got offered for you guys, and then we'll get into our 3 best prop bets. Let me just share the screen here real quick with you guys. So, a couple sexy props that we got here for you guys. First of which is the hype train wins. So that includes Tsarukyan, Rakhmonov, and Nurmagomedov. You can choose whether all 3 win, you'll get minus 106 on that, or if only 2 win, plus 129. If 1 wins, plus 760. And if none of them win, plus 10,400. So if you want to be that ballsy guys that plays that thinks none of them wins, That's the prop that you can go with. Again, it doesn't matter how many of, which ones of them win. It depends as many of them win, depending on which one you select, if that makes sense. All right. Secondly, total successful takedowns for Arman Tsarukyan. I'll ask you here, Cody, over under 3.5. How many takedowns do you think he succeeds on?
I'm saying under. It's a 5-round fight, but like again, has anybody seen Gamrot get dominated in wrestling before? Like I haven't, so I still need to see it. But I'm gonna say the under 3.5.
There you go. Total completed rounds. So you might have to do some quick math in your head right now if you want to pull it up. But Cloudbet has it set at 23.5 rounds that we get out of all 12 fights. What are you thinking here?
Okay, so we're gonna get 3 out of Jinyu Frey versus Demoupolous. You'll get probably 3 out of Kelleher Bautista. You're probably gonna get 2 out of Baez versus Durden. So we're looking at 8, 9, 10 after Morozov Paiva, 13, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. I'm going to guess about 26, 27. What was the line set at?
23.5. So over 23.
I would take the over, yeah.
Minus 125 for the over 23.5.
Unless it's like last week where everyone gets melted in a minute. I think we get some rounds this time around.
Yeah, we should see it, especially with the fact they're not in front of a crowd this weekend. I mean, I feel like that did have something to do with it last week and the fighters just being energized to finally compete in front of a crowd. But we'll see if it slows down the pace now that they're back at the Apex. Total submissions is over under 2.5. What are you thinking here?
Over under 2.5. Well, I'm going to say the under because the submission artist here, Vanessa Demoupolous, I just don't think she snags one up. I think JP Baez could snag one up, right? I think TJ Brown could snag one up. Nchukwi could snag one up. Of course, Rodolfo Vieira, most people would tell you he could. Umar could. Maybe you take the over on that one. It's 2.5. Like submissions don't right there often. That's the thing, but yeah, straight up, I've got Rakhmonov,
right?
Giagos, Moises. Like, there's a lot of good submission guys on this card. So I think I would take the over. I'll take the over on 2.5. You know what? Last week we got a bunch of first round KOs. This week we got first round.
Over 2.5 sits at minus 125 for anybody interested. There you guys go. We got 2 more props to go over here, Cody, and then I'll let you go. Total knockouts over under 3.5.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the over on the knockouts. Again, I think probably get some later round knockouts, but for me, my money's worth. I got Rakhmonov for the knockout. I've got potentially Umar Nurmagomedov, unless he snags me with a submission after that, but Chris Curtis with the knockout. You know what? Maybe not. Maybe about 3 knockouts.
Minus 120.
Yeah. I feel like there's going to be 3 knockouts and 3 submissions. So you would hit the under on the knockouts and the over on submissions.
There you go. Get the hook on both of them there. Actually, I do have a couple more props here that we'll quickly get through. Fastest finish, who are you expecting it to be? Full card.
Full card, fastest finish. I'm going to go with Shavkat Rakhmonov.
And sorry, that main card, if it's Rakhmonov, you're going to get plus 550. Let me just quickly change the slide here to the next one. For the full card, if you still go with Rakhmonov, is plus 1100. And then the last one, fight of the night. Which fight do you think takes fight of the night?
Fight of the night, I'm going to go with.
There's a couple of them, man. There's a couple
I know. You know what I would say? I would say Morozov versus Paiva. Like, Morozov brings it, and then he tends to falter down the stretch, and Paiva just takes a whole lot of shots. It's pretty exciting, right? And then he'll either topple over and they'll win fight of the night, or he'll take everything and hit Morozov with something good and topple him over. And plus 1,000, dude, this is going to be a pretty entertaining fight. Sign me up for that one.
Yeah, I got Baez, Durden, plus 1,200, Morozov, Paiva, plus 1,000, and Maness, Nurmagomedov, plus 1,200 could be a sneaky one if Maness can, outperform his odds a little bit. Even if he comes out on the losing end, he can make that thing very interesting.
I'll tell you one thing. They got Ulberg versus Nchukwi as plus 600. Who come up with that one?
Yeah, that's an interesting
in my
one.
opinion, that's the worst fight on the card. I don't know why it's the odds-on favorite for being fight of the night, but prove me wrong. I've been wrong many times before.
Our guy Nathan in the comment section is saying he's going to go with Magny Rakhmonov at plus 1100. We'll see
True,
how that
yeah,
plays out.
could be good. And one guy's got a 100% finish ratio. Neil Magny's just a perennial good gatekeeper. Yeah, it could lead to, pushing him, it getting into some later rounds, some exciting moments. So I would say I was also tempted on Gamrot Tsarukyan. Like, if Gamrot meets him in the center of the cage and pushes him, this kid's gonna have to dig down and find another level, which he's possibly capable of. Or Gamrot breaks him, right? In a 5-round situation, you saw last week it was Calvin Kattar versus Emmett with the fight of the night. 5 rounds always means more. There's more drama. There's more on the line. There's more. The guys get tired and they need to dig deep, and there's bigger moments. So I would say that's probably live as well.
Yeah, no, I'd have to agree with that. All right, let's get to the 3 best prop bets, and then we'll wrap this thing up. I'll kick it off as always. First of which, Tsarukyan Gamrot fight goes to decision minus 105. I'm expecting it to be very competitive for both guys to go out there. And, I think the vast majority of this fight will be based in the grappling realm, which should allow this fight to go the full 25 minutes, allow it to slow down a little bit, and have that pace where we likely won't get a finish here. So minus 105, even though over 4.5, in case you guys want that 2.5 minute kind of leeway there. I believe that's currently hanging around minus 120, minus 130. I think that's a damn good spot as well. Next up, Nchukwi by decision plus 375. This one kind of stuck out to me considering his fighting style, right? Like, either he's going to knock you out quickly or he'll just break you down slowly throughout a fight. And I think that's what's going to happen here. It might be a little bit tough for him early with the speed advantage that I expect Carlos Ulberg to have. But as this fight starts to drag on, I think Nchukwi starts to pull away, whether it's with his grappling or his stalking style of striking, where he just marches down his opponents and just chips away at them. And then lastly, I'm going to go with the Nurmagomedov and Nate Maness fight. Doesn't go to decision. Chalky at minus 200, but I think that both guys have finishing opportunities. I think Nurmagomedov is just miles ahead better than Maness on the ground. And I think he'll be able to either find a submission or a ground and pound, or club and sub situation is absolutely possible. Or Maness, if his takedown defense and his get-ups hold true like they have over his last 2 fights, maybe even 3 fights, it could produce a knockout in his own right. So minus 200, I don't mind it. I'm expecting violence, and I'm willing to pay the chalk on it. Cody, you're up, my friend.
All right, we're starting off with a little Chris Curtis versus KO, minus 120. Now, we've hit the Chris Curtis by KO the last 2 times we've been playing the props on him, and now they're just not giving you the same juices. But all the same, I think he gets the job done. If you do want to get a little more bold with this, I would suggest trying to chase that 2nd or 3rd round finish. I think 2nd round's plus 600, 3rd round's plus 1,000. I think they're both live, but Action Man gets the job done. Moving on, we are going to hit up, it's not loading here maybe.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah, no, all good. I got it written down. Yeah, buys versus Durden. Fight doesn't go the distance. Minus 115. I think a lot of us are on the same page. I think Cody Durden's probably got enough firepower standing to clip JP. They call him buys, whatever. He might be able to clip JP Bays and put him away, but I think JP Bays' wrestling is going to start to come out in this fight. He's going to tire Durden out. Once Durden gets tired, he's going to snap up the guillotine. You don't really care who wins as long as one of them finishes the other guy. So I got JP Bays winning inside the distance. And to play it safe, I would say 115 on both sides. If Cody Durden does win, though, I would like odds. Maybe Cloudbet could put odds to this. Will Cody Durden say on the microphone, "I'm sending him back to South Africa"? And will people freak out calling him a racist? Who knows? You got to stay tuned for that one. And then finally, our main prop, or a big prop here, shot caught Rakhmonov by KO. Plus 150. No disrespect to Neil Magny. I know what he brings to the table, but you can also see him slowing down ever so slightly. Max Payne Griffin hurting him his last time out was a bad sign. Him struggling as much with range and striking. Now getting in there with the young, hungry prospect, a guy that's just kind of lighting the MMA world on fire right now. I think it's a tough task. I think if you're the UFC, you know what you have in Magny, a good gatekeeper, guy that's been around the block, but a guy that's never really broken into your top 5. And with Rakhmonov, nobody really wants to fight him. They're having trouble getting matchups for the guy. But beyond that, you could put this guy to title contention within the next couple fights. What he needs to do is he needs to be good North American guys with big names so that the North American audience can gravitate towards him. Beating Neil Magny would do a lot for him. That's kind of the issue in that main event with Tsarukyan versus Gamrot is that, I guess Gamrot beat Jeremy Stevens, but for the most part, both guys have been flying under the radar in terms of those big gratifying wins, and that's why they need one. That's why you put them in a main event to try to give them that spotlight so that when you flipping through a pay-per-view and you see one of these guys challenging for a title, you're not going to be like, who? You would never think that. I would never think that. If you're watching this show right now, guarantee you would never think that. But it goes back to that casual fan mentality. I'm not calling anybody a casual fan. I'm just saying to sell 1 million pay-per-views, you need the casuals to get on board, right? Because the hardcores are only going to sell 150, 200,000, right? So it's always that next step beyond. the Jake Paul, Logan Paul, they can sell a lot because you got like that average demographic bringing them in. Gamrot versus Tsarukyan, they don't got that. It's one of those fights that might be flying under the radar, but it's a great fight. Rakhmonov, he's going to have the same problem. He needs to go out there, he needs to beat legitimate competition, make a name for himself, get the finishes. I think he's capable of doing all that. So plus 150, I think this is coming out party, and I don't mind that one bit.
I love it. I love it. I can't wait for this card. Unfortunately, for the third time this month, I'm not going to be able to catch it live as I have a wedding to go to, but I definitely will catch up on it when I'm able to get back home and, watch it with the sober eye. I tried watching, I remember last week I tried watching the card and I was shit faced and I just couldn't focus. And I believe, I forgot which fight it was, but I just could not focus. Or I'm like, you know what? I'll leave this for when I'm sober. So we'll see what happens this weekend. But Cody's going to be busy as well. I'm not sure if he'll be able to catch the fights live, as he'll have his own MMA event that he's going to be going to, that he's matchmaking for. Obviously, it hasn't panned out the way he had hoped, but he's still going to be getting some fights this weekend. Cody, I'd love for you to plug anything you can for that. So if there's anybody in or around that Niagara Falls region that can come attend it, they'll know what to do. So please let them know.
Yeah, tickets are on sale now. You can check it out. If you just want to stay home and watch the fights as well, I mean, it is live on Fight TV. But yeah, the card's taking a beating, and the promoter's a super good guy. I mean, him and his business partner, Jack, have put a lot of resources into the card. It's just a shame that things are not working out for them because I know how passionate they are about it. And it's just difficult getting two grown men to get medicals and agree to fight each other. And imagine you meet somebody for the first time, right? It's like, oh, cool, you exchange numbers and whatever, and this person calls you once a day. But imagine you're dealing with 30 full-grown men, which I am. So I'm getting 30 calls every single day from everything. This guy, oh, he wants to change out his walkout music. Oh, I need to change my walkout music. This guy wants to catch weight at 140 because he's a little heavy. Oh, this guy's coach, he's not able to travel that day. I'm going to not have a coach. Oh, this guy wants to come 2 days before a weigh-in, so could you book a hotel early? It's just fucking bullshit. All this fucking bullshit, right? But similar to them, I can't fucking quit, right? I can't quit. A lot of them have quit on me, but I'm not going to quit on them. So you put your big boy pants on, you get right back at it. And same thing on Twitter. I blew a parlay. I'm upset with myself. I get it. And you can call me a jerk off on Twitter. I don't fucking give a shit, right? Because like, what's the option? Am I going to fucking quit? I'm going to fucking hang myself? No. Put your fucking big boy pants on. You get at it. If you are thinking about hanging yourself, by the way, talk to somebody, right? It's cool to talk to people. All good. Not taking a shot at anybody dealing with depression. Just saying sometimes you just got to fucking get over it and keep going. So that's the main thing. But I will tell you this, right? When we made all that big money, we made that $160,000 when times were the best of times. The best thing we did was we bought a $50,000 racehorse. Now he was a baby. Looked like an iffy proposition at the time. Fuck, he's coming along good, man. He baby raced this week. Or his school this week, fucking won by 7 lengths, look big, look strong. Needs to drop about 5 more seconds, but by early July, he might be racing $100,000 races. So fingers crossed, life can't all be that bad. But to all my DOP guys, you guys have just been the real rock, you know what I mean? Always good things to say, a lot of positivity, always supporting the show. I jump on Manpreet's show, you guys support it. If I do anything, you guys support it, I can't do wrong in your guys' eye. And having that kind of respect from you guys really does mean a lot. So if you're tuning in the show to support me, to support Manpreet, to support us, to support the endeavors, it truly does mean a lot. So as much bad things might happen in your life, there's always good things happening as well. I'm just appreciative for that.
There you guys go. MMA will always bring out the best in people as well. The ones that are jerk offs will obviously be able to show themselves, and we can know how to distance ourselves from those guys as well.
Dude, think about this. Julian Marquez is like a fringe top 25 guy, and that many people are willing to send a random dude death threats? That's commitment, baby. You guys got his back. And I'm the same way. Ariel Helwani called me a schlub. Death threats to Ariel Helwani. Right. So I mean the guys are good guys. They got my back, they got your back, and I'm thankful for everything, really.
Awesome. All right. Make sure you guys show Cody love as always at CJ Saftic on Twitter. You guys can follow me obviously at MMALOT on Twitter. Make sure you guys follow the All-Star on social media aspects as well, or their social media accounts. I believe it is the All-Star Sports. So make sure you guys go follow them. All the links to that stuff is in the description below as well. Make sure you guys check out Cloudbet. You guys saw all the fun props that we were able to make up for this coming card. You guys can take full advantage of that by signing up to Cloudbet in the description below. And then lastly, shout out to Bet Online once again for sponsoring the show. You guys can sign up with them with the link in the description below as well. I've already laid out why they're one of the best MMA sports books out there as well. All right. Good luck on your bets this weekend, folks. We will be back next week for the big UFC 276 card. Israel Adesanya against Jared Cannonier. I believe Alexander Volkanovski versus Max Holloway, co-main event as well. good God, I'm getting fired up just thinking about that card. Can't wait to break it down with my guy Cody again. Same time, same place next week. Actually, same day, same place next week. We always shift the time a little bit on Thursdays, but for sure, Thursdays is when you guys can expect propping you up. So I'll see you guys next week. Good luck on your bets. And usually I end this with like war somebody, right? I'm trying to think of who we agreed on the most this card. Who did we agree on the most, Cody?
Who did we agree on the most? I am going to say, well, we both agreed on JP buys pretty good. If you want to say war action, man, I wouldn't tell you not to, because he is the action man.
For the culture, let's go war Chris Curtis, the action man. Go out there and knock out Rodolfo Vieira and make some people some money. Good luck, folks.